In the glass tower where billion-dollar decisions are made before breakfast, Evelyn Cross doesn't raise her voice. She doesn't have to. One glance from the CEO can end careers, crush dreams, and send grown executives scrambling for cover. But when the projector dies during the most critical meeting of the quarter and she turns her fury on a trembling IT director, nobody expects what happens next. A janitor, a nobody with a mop bucket and a daughter waiting at home, rolls his cart into the war room and does the impossible. He tells the most feared woman in corporate America that she's wrong. What happens when the one person who has nothing loses his fear? And what breaks first, the empire built on terror, or the woman who built it? If you want to see how this plays out, stay until the end, and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The 53rd floor of Anderson Tower didn't have windows that opened. Evelyn Cross preferred it that way. Sealed glass, climate control, air so processed, it didn't carry memory or weather or the messy unpredictability of the world 53 stories below. Everything controlled, everything measured, everything perfect. She stood at the head of the obsidian conference table at 6:45 on a Tuesday morning, 15 minutes before the quarterly strategic review, watching her executive team file in like defendants approaching sentencing. They wore their fear well, stitched into tailored suits, hidden behind forced smiles, buried in the way they wouldn't meet her eyes until absolutely necessary. Good. Fear kept them sharp. Fear kept them hungry. Fear kept Anderson Technologies at the top of the innovation sector for 8 consecutive years while competitors stumbled and burned. Marcus Chen, Chief Operating Officer, took his seat to her right. His coffee trembled just slightly as he set it down. Evelyn noticed. She always noticed. "Traffic?" she asked, her voice carrying the particular quality of Arctic wind, smooth, cold, cutting. "No, ma'am. Left early." Marcus adjusted his tablet, fingers moving too quickly. "Reviewed the presentation 3 times last night." "Then you should be confident." "I am." He wasn't. Evelyn could smell doubt the way sharks smell blood, and this morning the conference room reeked of it. The other executives settled into their chairs. Victoria Hahn from Product Development, James Okoye from Finance, Sarah Martinez from Marketing, David Brennan from Legal. Each of them carried portfolios thick with justifications, backup data, contingency explanations for every question Evelyn might ask. She didn't sit. She never sat during these meetings. Standing gave her the advantage of height, of movement, of the ability to circle like a predator while they remained fixed in place. "Projectors ready," Marcus said, nodding toward the young woman hovering near the equipment console. It confirmed everything's tested. The woman, Evelyn thought her name was Jennifer or Jessica, one of those interchangeable junior directors who cycled through the department every 18 months, gave a nervous nod. She couldn't have been more than 28, fresh from some graduate program, probably still believed competence and hard work mattered more than politics and perception. She'd learn. They all learned, or they left. Evelyn checked her watch, 6:58. She believed in punctuality the way some people believed in oxygen, essential, non-negotiable, the foundation of civilized existence. "Begin," she said. Marcus stood, shoulders back, and pressed the remote. The lights dimmed automatically. The massive screen behind Evelyn flickered to life, displaying the Anderson Technologies logo, a stylized circuit board forming an A that had become one of the most recognized symbols in the tech industry. Then the screen went black. Marcus pressed the button again. Nothing. He pressed it twice more, quick succession, the universal gesture of technological desperation. Still nothing. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees despite the climate control. Evelyn didn't move, but everyone felt her attention shift, lock, focus on the situation with the intensity of a magnifying glass concentrating sunlight into a burning point. Problem? Her voice could have etched glass. Just a second, it was working." Marcus turned to the IT director, whose name Evelyn suddenly remembered was Jennifer Park. "Jenny?" Jennifer was already at the console, fingers flying across the keyboard, face going pale in the blue glow of the monitors. "I don't understand. We tested this an hour ago. Everything was perfect." "Perfect," Evelyn repeated, tasting the word like poison. "And yet here we are, in the dark. With 7 executives, 4 board observers, and 2 institutional investors joining by video, and she glanced at her watch. 90 seconds, and we have nothing to show them. I can fix this. Jennifer's voice cracked slightly. She was rebooting something, switching cables, her movements becoming more frantic. Just give me a minute. You don't have a minute. You had weeks to prepare. You had hours to test. You had one job: make the technology work during a technology company's most important meeting of the quarter. Evelyn took 3 steps toward the console, and Jennifer flinched like she'd been struck. 1. Job. The system was functioning perfectly. I ran diagnostics. I don't care about diagnostics. I care about results. And right now the result is failure. Evelyn's voice never rose above conversational volume. She didn't need to shout. Every word landed with surgical precision, designed to cut. Do you know what this meeting represents? Do you have any concept of what's at stake? Jennifer's hands were shaking now, making it harder to work. She kept glancing at the screen, at Evelyn, at the cable connections, her breathing shallow and quick. Ma'am, if I could just… The backup system. The backup system should have been the primary plan. Redundancy is basic protocol, but apparently basic protocol is beyond your capabilities. The room was silent, except for Jennifer's increasingly desperate clicking and the soft hum of the ventilation system. The other executives stared at their tablets or the table or anywhere that wasn't the execution happening in front of them. Marcus half stood, then thought better of it and sat back down. I'm sorry, Jennifer whispered. I'll have it working in just… You're sorry. Evelyn stepped closer. Do you think Sony is sorry when they beat us to market? Do you think sorry pays for the quarterly revenue we're about to lose because we can't demonstrate our own technology? Do you think… The door opened. Not the main entrance. That would have been guards or assistants or someone expected. This was the service door, the one staff used for deliveries and maintenance, the one that wasn't supposed to open during executive meetings. A cleaning cart rolled through first, industrial gray loaded with supplies, one wheel squeaking slightly. Behind it came a man in a maintenance uniform, dark blue coveralls with an Anderson Technologies patch over the heart, work boots, a name tag that read Ryan. He was maybe 35, 40 at most, with the kind of lean build that came from actual physical work rather than expensive gym memberships. Dark hair starting to gray at the temples. A face that had seen weather and trouble but hadn't gone hard from it. He pushed the cart with the easy confidence of someone who belonged exactly where he was, doing exactly what he was doing. Every eye in the room turned to him. He stopped, taking in the scene with a quick sweep, the darkened screen, the panicking IT director, the frozen executives, Evelyn standing like an ice sculpture carved from corporate fury. Sorry, he said, voice calm and completely unflustered. Didn't realize the meeting had started. I'll come back. He started to turn the cart around. Wait. Evelyn's command could have stopped a train. Did facilities not receive the schedule? This floor is off limits during quarterly reviews. Ryan paused, one hand still on the cart handle. He looked at Evelyn directly, not challenging, not afraid, just looking at another human being. Got the schedule. Also got told the coffee station needed service before 7. Can't do both, so I prioritized what I was told. His voice carried a trace of something, not quite an accent, but the rounded vowels of somewhere west of here, somewhere that measured distance in hours, driven rather than subway stops. Then your priorities were wrong. Evelyn dismissed him with a glance, turning back to Jennifer. You have 30 seconds before I cancel this meeting and put a termination memo on… It's not her fault. The words dropped into the room like a stone into still water. Evelyn turned slowly, very slowly, the kind of slow that came before volcanic eruptions. Ryan hadn't moved. He stood there with his hand on his cleaning cart, meeting her gaze with the same calm directness. Excuse me? Evelyn's voice could have frozen nitrogen. The system. It's not her fault it failed. Ryan nodded toward Jennifer, who looked like she might pass out from shock and terror combined. Heat sensor in the projector probably tripped. Happens in these older buildings when the HVAC cycles. Nobody's fault. Just happens sometimes. The silence that followed was profound. Marcus Chen had gone completely rigid. Victoria Hahn had stopped breathing. James Okoye was staring at Ryan like he'd just announced plans to jump off the building. Evelyn took 3 steps toward the janitor. Her heels clicked on the polished floor with the rhythm of a countdown. You. Each word was its own sentence. Are a maintenance worker. You do not. Interrupt. Executive meetings. You do not. Offer technical opinions on systems you know nothing about, and you certainly do not contradict me. Ryan absorbed this without flinching. Then he did something that nobody in Anderson Tower had done in recent memory. He shrugged. You asked her why the system failed. I told you why. Whether you want to blame her for it anyway, that's your call. But yelling at someone for a mechanical failure doesn't fix the mechanical failure. Just makes people scared to tell you when things break. For 3 full seconds, Evelyn Cross, the woman who had stared down hostile takeover attempts, crushed union organizing efforts, and made Silicon Valley investors weep during negotiations, did not have words. Marcus found his voice first. Ryan, buddy, maybe you should... I asked you a question. Evelyn cut him off without looking away from Ryan. Her voice had gone quiet now, dangerously quiet. Are you an engineer, a technician? Do you have any credentials whatsoever that qualify you to diagnose our systems? No, ma'am. Then what possible reason could you have for believing your opinion matters? Ryan was quiet for a moment, and something shifted in his expression. Not anger, not defiance, but something sadder and older. Because watching you tear into that girl wasn't about fixing the projector. It was about making someone hurt because you're frustrated. And that's not okay, credentials or not. The room had ceased to contain oxygen. Get out. Evelyn's words were barely above a whisper. Get your cart, get off this floor, and report to HR at 9 a.m. to collect your final paycheck. Ryan nodded slowly. Figured as much. He started to turn the cart, then paused. For what it's worth, the reset switch is behind the lower left panel. Hard reboot takes about 90 seconds. Should work fine after that. He left the same way he came in, the squeaky wheel on his cart gradually fading as the door closed behind him. Jennifer, hands trembling so badly she could barely work, found the panel Ryan had mentioned. She hit the switch. The screen flickered, died, then blazed back to life, showing the Anderson Technologies logo in perfect high definition. The crisis was over. The meeting proceeded, and Evelyn Cross delivered the quarterly review with her usual lethal precision, destroying weak projections, accepting strong data, making decisions that would affect thousands of jobs and millions of dollars with the cold efficiency that had built her empire. But something had happened in that room. Something had cracked. And as the meeting ended and the executives filed out like prisoners granted parole, Evelyn stood alone at the head of the table, looking at the service door where a janitor had told her she was wrong. Nobody told Evelyn Cross she was wrong. Nobody interrupted her. Nobody challenged her. Nobody stayed calm when she showed her teeth. She pulled out her phone and typed a message to Helen Vasquez, her head of HR. Termination paperwork for Ryan Cole, maintenance staff. On my desk by end of day. The reply came in seconds. Already drafted. We'll have it ready for signature by 5. Evelyn set the phone down and stood in the empty conference room, surrounded by the empire she'd built through fear and fury and the absolute refusal to accept anything less than perfection from anyone, ever, for any reason. Outside, the city stretched in every direction, millions of people going about their lives, most of them never knowing her name or what happened in towers like this, including one janitor who'd probably already cleaned out his locker and was heading home to what? Evelyn realized she knew nothing about him, didn't know if he had family, ambitions, dreams beyond pushing a cart and emptying trash cans in buildings owned by people who never saw him. Didn't matter, couldn't matter. She'd built this company on discipline and standards. The moment you let someone challenge your authority without consequence, you invited chaos. You opened the door to every mediocre employee who wanted to make excuses instead of results. Ryan Cole had crossed a line. He'd pay the price. That's how the world worked. Evelyn gathered her materials and headed back to her office, her heels clicking that same countdown rhythm on the marble floors. The termination memo arrived at 4:45 p.m. Evelyn was in her office, 72nd floor, corner view, furniture that cost more than most people's cars, reviewing the disaster recovery protocols that Sarah Martinez had presented. They were adequate, barely. She'd marked 17 sections that needed revision and sent it back with a note that somehow made adequate feel like criminal negligence. Her assistant knocked and entered in the same motion. Kevin had been with her for 6 years, which made him a veteran by Anderson Tower standards. He'd learned to move quickly, speak efficiently, and never show surprise at anything she demanded. HR package, he said, setting the folder on her desk. Ryan Cole. Evelyn opened it without ceremony. Single sheet, standard termination language, violation of protocol, effective immediately, severance package calculated according to tenure, 8 months apparently, and standard benefits through the end of the month. Her pen hovered over the signature line. She saw the signature line every week, sometimes multiple times. Anderson Technologies employed 4,000 people across 5 buildings. Turnover was constant. People who couldn't handle the pressure, couldn't meet the standards, couldn't adapt to the culture of excellence that Evelyn demanded. This should have been routine. She set the pen down and opened her computer, pulling up Ryan Cole's personnel file. Age 37. Hired 8 months ago through a contracting agency. Previous employment, Reynolds Manufacturing, machinery operator, 12 years. Gap in employment, 14 months. Current position, custodial services, night shift, building maintenance level 1. Education, high school diploma, some community college, no degree. Emergency contact, Emma Cole, daughter, age 9. Evelyn stopped. Daughter. Single father then. The gap in employment suddenly had context. A child who needed care, bills that needed paying, the kind of desperate mathematics that led a former machinery operator to take a night janitor job that probably paid a third of what he used to make. She closed the file, opened it again. Performance reviews. Reliable, thorough, professional, completes assignments efficiently, no complaints from staff or tenants. No complaints. Until he'd walked into her meeting and told her she was wrong. Evelyn picked up the pen again. This was business. Personal circumstances didn't matter. You couldn't run a company on sympathy. The moment you started making exceptions, everything fell apart. She thought about how he'd looked at her. Not angry, not afraid, just disappointed. Like she was someone who should have known better. Like she was someone who'd failed a test she didn't know she was taking. Her phone buzzed. Text from Marcus. Board loved the presentation. Wilson especially. Great recovery. Recovery. Because a janitor had told Jennifer Park where the reset switch was. Evelyn set the pen down again and stood, walking to the window. The city spread below her, lights starting to glow as evening settled in. Somewhere down there, Ryan Cole was probably having dinner with his daughter, probably worrying about rent and groceries and how long it would take to find another job. Probably not thinking about Evelyn Cross at all. She'd fired hundreds of people, thousands, if you counted the layoffs and restructurings. It was part of leadership. You couldn't build anything great by keeping people who didn't fit. But something about this felt different. He hadn't been incompetent, hadn't been lazy or careless or any of the usual reasons. He'd broken protocol, yes. Interrupted a meeting, absolutely. But he'd been right. About the projector, about Jennifer, about... Evelyn turned from the window and sat back at her desk. She pulled the termination memo toward her, pen poised. 8 months of employment, 1 daughter, night shift work that probably meant he was sleeping while she was at school, parenting on fumes and determination. 1 moment of speaking up, 1 moment of truth nobody else in that room had the courage to voice. The pen touched paper, lifted, touched again, lifted. Evelyn closed the folder and dropped it in her outbox without signing. Kevin, she called. Her assistant appeared instantly. Yes? The Cole termination. Hold it. Hold it? Did I stutter? No, ma'am. For how long? I'll let you know. Kevin took the folder and left, his face betraying nothing. He'd learned that too. Never question, never assume, just execute. Evelyn turned back to her computer and pulled up the building's staffing schedules. Night maintenance worked 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., Monday through Friday. Ryan Cole was assigned to floors 50 through 75. She'd never noticed him before today. That wasn't surprising. Evelyn didn't notice custodial staff any more than she noticed the electrical wiring or the plumbing. Infrastructure, necessary but invisible. Except he'd made himself visible. and now she couldn't quite make him invisible again. She worked until 7, then 8, then 9. The office emptied around her the way it always did, people escaping to lives and homes and families. Evelyn stayed. She always stayed. Work was clean, predictable, safe. At 9:45, she gathered her things and headed for the executive elevator. At 9:58, she got off on the 53rd floor instead of the parking garage. The lights were different at night, softer, emergency lighting instead of full overhead. The floor felt like a different place, empty and quiet, the conference room dark behind its glass walls. She heard the cart before she saw it. That same squeaky wheel. Ryan emerged from one of the side offices, pushing his cart, a trash bag slung over one shoulder. He saw her and stopped, not startled exactly, but alert. Careful. Ms. Cross? No fear in his voice, but no warmth either. Professional distance. Evelyn realized she'd come down here without any plan for what to say. She stood there in her $1,000 suit, briefcase in hand, facing a man in coveralls who was holding a bag of garbage. The memo didn't go through, she said. Ryan absorbed this. Okay. You're not fired. Okay? That's all you have to say? He set the trash bag on his cart carefully, then looked at her with that same clear, direct gaze. What would you like me to say? Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm grateful you didn't destroy my life over telling the truth. Most people would at least pretend to be relieved. I am relieved. My daughter needs health insurance and I need this job, but I'm not going to pretend I'm grateful for basic decency. Evelyn felt something sharp twist in her chest. Basic decency. Yeah, Ryan picked up the trash bag again. Not punishing people for being honest with you. That's pretty basic. In my world, honesty without respect is insubordination. In my world, respect without honesty is just fear wearing a nice suit. They stood in the dim hallway, the distance between them vast despite being only 10 feet apart. Different worlds, different rules, different definitions of every word that mattered. You could have stayed quiet, Evelyn said. It would have been safer. Probably. So why didn't you? Ryan was quiet for a moment, and something moved behind his eyes. Not anger, but old pain that had scarred over into something harder. Because watching people get torn apart for things that aren't their fault reminds me of every bad boss and bad job I've ever had. And I promised myself if I saw it happening and could say something, I would, even if it cost me. That's an expensive promise. Turns out I can afford it. Ryan shifted the bag. I've lost more important things than jobs. The words hung there, heavy with unspoken history. Evelyn wanted to ask, lost what? Lost how? What made a man willing to sacrifice his livelihood for a stranger he'd never met? But she didn't ask, didn't have the right, didn't have the language for conversations that went beneath the surface of transactions and protocols. If you pull something like that again, she said instead, I won't hold the memo next time. Understood. Interrupting meetings is grounds for immediate termination. Yes, ma'am. And offering unsolicited technical advice is outside your job description. Noted. Evelyn turned to leave, then stopped. The projector. How did you know about the reset switch? For the first time, Ryan almost smiled. Used to work with industrial machinery. When something stops working and people are panicking, first rule is check if it just needs a hard reboot. Turns out expensive projectors aren't that different from assembly line equipment. You knew the solution the whole time. I knew what to try. Sometimes that's enough. Evelyn nodded slowly. She walked to the elevator, pressed the button, waited. Before the doors opened, she spoke without turning around. Thank you. For what? The projector. The meeting went well. Ryan made a soft sound that might have been amusement. You're welcome, Ms. Cross. The elevator arrived. Evelyn stepped in and turned to face the hallway as the doors began to close. Ryan had already gone back to work, pushing his cart toward the next office, that squeaky wheel marking his path through a world of glass and steel that he cleaned but would never own. The doors closed. Evelyn rode down to the parking garage in silence, her reflection staring back at her from the polished elevator walls. She looked powerful, successful, perfectly composed. She looked exactly like the woman she'd built herself into, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, She wondered if that woman was someone she actually liked. The next morning, Evelyn arrived at 6 a.m. instead of her usual 6:30. The executive floor was empty, quiet, the city beyond the windows just starting to wake. She made coffee in the private kitchen, something she usually left for Kevin, and carried it to her office. At 6:15, she called down to facilities management. "This is Evelyn Cross. I need the maintenance records for the HVAC and projector systems on 53, and the service reports from Ryan Cole for the last month. On my desk, in an hour." The facilities manager stammered something affirmative. The reports arrived in 45 minutes. Evelyn spread them across her desk. Ryan's service logs were meticulous. Every task completed, every issue noted, every detail documented in neat handwriting that suggested someone who took pride in work that nobody noticed. The HVAC report showed exactly what he'd said. The system cycled at irregular intervals, creating temperature fluctuations that would absolutely trigger safety sensors in sensitive equipment. He'd been right. And he'd known he was right. And he'd said it anyway, knowing it would probably cost him everything. Evelyn sat back in her chair, coffee going cold in her hands. She'd spent 20 years building a company culture where people were afraid to make mistakes, where one failure could end careers, where perfection wasn't a goal but a mandate, and anything less was unacceptable. And she'd been proud of it, proud of the fear, proud of the standards, proud of building something so excellent that only the strongest survived. But what happened when the culture of fear became so strong that nobody could tell the truth? What happened when the cost of honesty was so high that people stayed silent and watched others take the fall for things that weren't their fault? What happened when a janitor was braver than your entire executive team? Evelyn picked up her phone and pulled up Jennifer Park's employee file. 26 years old, MIT graduate, 16 months at Anderson Technologies. Performance reviews. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Until yesterday. Until one mechanical failure that wasn't her fault had put her in front of Evelyn's fury. Evelyn typed a message to Helen in HR. "Schedule meeting with Jennifer Park, 2 p.m. today. My office." Then she opened her email and started working through the morning's correspondence, trying not to think about squeaky wheels and men who spoke truth to power and the strange, uncomfortable feeling that she'd been playing a game nobody could win. Not even her. The city woke up around Anderson Tower. Thousands of people heading to work, most of them never knowing what happened on the 53rd floor or the 72nd, never knowing about the small earthquake that had shaken the foundation of an empire built on fear. But Evelyn knew, and she couldn't quite unknow it. The question was, what would she do about it? The answer, like everything important, would reveal itself in what she did next. And deep in her chest, beneath all the armor and ice and perfectly controlled perfection, something had begun to crack. Jennifer Park arrived at Evelyn's office at exactly 2 p.m., carrying a leather portfolio that her hands gripped like a life preserver. Kevin showed her in with the neutral expression of someone who'd learned never to signal whether a closed-door meeting meant promotion or execution. The young woman stood in the doorway, shoulders back, chin up, but Evelyn could see the tension in her jaw, the way her knuckles had gone white against the dark leather. "Sit," Evelyn said, not looking up from her computer. Jennifer sat. The chair across from Evelyn's desk was deliberately positioned, lower than Evelyn's, forcing anyone sitting in it to look up slightly. Another small exercise of power. Another way to maintain the hierarchy. Evelyn finished typing, closed her laptop with a decisive click, and finally met Jennifer's eyes. "How long have you been with Anderson Technologies?" 16 months, ma'am. "And before yesterday, how would you rate your performance?" Jennifer's throat worked. "I believe I've met or exceeded expectations in every quarterly review." "You believe?" "I know I have, ma'am. My reviews have been consistently excellent." Evelyn leaned back in her chair. "Then walk me through what happened yesterday morning." A flash of something, confusion, maybe fear, crossed Jennifer's face. "With the projector?" "Yes. I tested the system at 5:30 a.m., ran full diagnostics. Everything was functioning perfectly. Video output, audio sync, network connectivity. I documented everything according to protocol." Jennifer's voice steadied as she moved into technical territory. "The failure was a thermal shutdown triggered by HVAC cycling. The building's climate control system creates temperature fluctuations that can trip safety sensors and sensitive equipment. It's a known issue with the older infrastructure, but it's intermittent and hard to predict. And you didn't flag this as a potential problem? I did, ma'am. 3 months ago. I submitted a facilities request to have the HVAC system evaluated and potentially upgraded. It was marked as low priority. Evelyn pulled up her computer again, searched through the facilities database. There it was. Request number 47823, submitted by J. Park. Status, pending review, priority, low. She'd never seen it, had never been escalated to her level because it was maintenance, infrastructure, the invisible foundation that nobody thought about until it failed. The janitor, Evelyn said. Ryan Cole. Do you know him? Jennifer blinked at the change of subject. Not well. He's night shift. We've exchanged maybe 3 words total. And yet he defended you. I don't understand why. Jennifer's voice went quiet. I've never done anything for him. We're not friends. I'm not even sure he knew my name before yesterday. Evelyn stood and walked to the window, her thinking position, where she could look out at the city and organize the complex equations of business into clean, actionable decisions. I built this company on accountability, she said. No excuses, no exceptions. You fail, you pay the price. That's how we maintain excellence. Behind her, Jennifer said nothing. But accountability without context is just punishment, and punishment without fairness is just cruelty. Evelyn turned to face her. You did your job correctly. You identified a problem and reported it through proper channels. The system failed you, not the other way around. Jennifer's eyes widened slightly. I'm approving your facilities request. Full HVAC evaluation and upgrade for floors 40 through 60. Budget approved through operations. You'll oversee the implementation. Thank you, ma'am. Don't thank me. I should have seen the request months ago. That's my failure, not yours. The words felt strange in Evelyn's mouth. Admission of error, acknowledgement of imperfection. But they were true. And Ryan Cole's voice echoed in her head. Respect without honesty is just fear wearing a nice suit. Jennifer stood, still looking uncertain. Is there anything else? Yes. Evelyn moved back to her desk, pulling up a document. I want you to audit all pending facilities requests across all buildings. Anything that affects system reliability gets escalated to my attention immediately. And I want to report on how many technical failures in the last 2 years could have been prevented with proper maintenance. That's a significant project. It is, which is why you'll need support. Pull whoever you need from IT and facilities. This is priority 1. Jennifer nodded, making notes on her tablet, the fear slowly draining from her posture. I'll have a preliminary assessment by end of week. Good. Evelyn sat down, signaling the meeting was ending. And Jennifer? Yes, ma'am? In the future, if you identify a problem and it doesn't get addressed through normal channels, bring it directly to me. I can't fix what I don't know is broken. Jennifer left, and Evelyn sat alone in her office, staring at the closed door. She'd just done something unprecedented, admitted fault, changed policy, invited lower-level employees to bypass the chain of command. In any normal week, it would have been unthinkable. But this wasn't a normal week, because a janitor had looked at her with disappointment instead of fear, and somehow that had shaken the foundation more than any hostile takeover or market crash ever had. Evelyn started noticing things. It happened gradually, like adjusting to a new prescription, the world coming into focus in ways she hadn't realized were blurred. She noticed that when she walked through the building, conversations stopped. People found urgent reasons to study their phones, examine documents, hurry in opposite directions. The wake of silence that followed her wasn't respect. It was fear. She noticed that in meetings, people agreed with her too quickly. They didn't push back on bad ideas, didn't offer alternatives, didn't risk disagreement, even when disagreement might save the company money or time or disaster. She noticed that the elevator rides were always alone. Nobody wanted to share space with her unless required. 21 floors from executive parking to her office, and in 3 years she'd never had a single casual conversation during that ride. And she noticed Ryan Cole. Not deliberately, not seeking him out. But once you saw someone, really saw them, they stopped being invisible. He worked quietly, efficiently, moving through the building like water, present but unobtrusive, essential but ignored. He emptied trash, cleaned surfaces, restocked supplies, all the invisible labor that kept a building of 4,000 people functioning. And he talked to people. Evelyn saw it one evening when she worked late, passing through the 65th floor at 9 p.m. Ryan was cleaning the break room, and one of the junior analysts, Tom something, worked in market research, was making tea slumped against the counter with the exhausted posture of someone who'd been working 16-hour days. "Rough week?" Ryan asked, wiping down the coffee maker. Tom laughed without humor. "Rough month. Presentation to the board on Friday, and my lead analyst just quit. Walked out this morning, no notice, just gone." "That's harsh. You have backup?" "Had backup. Cross reassigned them to the Singapore project 2 weeks ago. So now I'm doing the work of 3 people with half the time I need." Ryan dried his hands on a towel, leaning against the counter. "Can you push the presentation? Ask for an extension?" "You don't ask Evelyn Cross for extensions. You deliver or you're gone." "What if you deliver something incomplete and it's wrong?" Tom shrugged, defeated. "Then I'm gone anyway, but at least I tried." Ryan was quiet for a moment, then, "What if you told her the truth, that you're understaffed and the timeline's impossible? Worst case, same result. Best case, you get the resources you need." "Have you met her? She doesn't accept impossible." "Maybe, but she also doesn't accept failure. And if you're going to fail anyway, might as well fail honestly." Tom looked at Ryan like he'd suggested jumping off the building. "Easy for you to say. You're not the one in the crosshairs." "True enough." Ryan picked up his cart. "But I've been in crosshairs before, and hiding from them never helped. You do what you think is right." He moved on to the next area, leaving Tom standing there with his tea, something shifting in his expression. Not hope exactly, but maybe the recognition that there were different kinds of failure. Evelyn stood in the hallway, invisible in the shadows, having heard every word. She pulled out her phone and checked the board presentation schedule. Tom Hendricks, Market Research, Consumer Behavior Trends in Emerging Markets. Critical data for the Q4 strategy. Then she checked staffing. Ryan was right. 3 people assigned, 2 reassigned, 1 quit. Tom Hendricks was doing impossible work with impossible resources on an impossible timeline. And nobody had told her, because nobody wanted to admit impossible to Evelyn Cross. She sent a message to Marcus. Tom Hendricks' presentation moved to Monday. He gets his team back tomorrow, plus 1 additional analyst. Make it happen. Then she went back to her office and sat in the dark, the city glittering below, and wondered how many other people in this building were drowning while pretending to swim because they were too afraid to ask for help. On Thursday morning, Evelyn did something she hadn't done in 5 years. She walked through the building, not the executive floors or the departments she visited regularly, but the infrastructure, the mailroom, the facilities office, the IT help desk, the break rooms and bathrooms and stairwells that made up the invisible architecture of daily work. She didn't announce herself, didn't bring assistance or security, just walked. The mailroom went silent when she entered. 6 people sorting packages and letters, all of them freezing like prey animals sensing a predator. "Good morning," Evelyn said. A chorus of "Good morning, ma'am" came back, voices tight with confusion and fear. She walked through slowly, observing. The equipment was old, sorting machines that probably dated back 10 years, computers running outdated software, ergonomic nightmares that would give anyone back problems after a full shift. "How long have you had these systems?" she asked the supervisor, a woman in her 50s with the weathered patience of someone who'd learned to work with what she had. "The sorters, since 2019, ma'am. We've requested upgrades, but—" She stopped, clearly editing herself in real time. "But what?" "But there were other priorities. What would you need to do your job efficiently?" The supervisor blinked. "Ma'am, it's not a trick question. If you could upgrade this operation, what would you change?" Slowly, carefully, the woman began talking. New sorters with barcode scanners, updated software that integrated with the shipping systems, better lighting, different tables that didn't require constant bending. Evelyn made notes on her phone. Anything else? Well, we could use another person during holiday season. November through January, we're understaffed by at least 2 people, but I know hiring is frozen. Hiring is frozen for non-essential positions. Mail distribution is essential. Evelyn sent a message to HR. You'll have 2 seasonal hires starting November 1st, and the equipment upgrades will be evaluated by facilities this week. She left before the supervisor could do more than stammer a thank you. The pattern repeated in facilities, in IT, and the cafeteria where staff served 4,000 meals a day with equipment that should have been replaced years ago. Everywhere she went, the story was the same. People making do, working around problems, afraid to ask for what they needed because asking meant admitting things weren't perfect. And admitting imperfection to Evelyn Cross was professional suicide. By noon, she had 17 pages of notes and a growing sense of vertigo. She'd built a machine that was eating itself, and everyone could see it except her. Friday at lunch, Evelyn didn't eat in her office like usual. She went to the staff cafeteria. The room went quiet when she entered. Not silent, there were 400 people eating, but the quality of noise changed, becoming cautious and self-conscious. Evelyn got in line like everyone else, selected a salad and coffee, paid with the same card everyone used. Then she stood there with her tray, scanning the room. Every table was full except one. The table where Ryan Cole sat alone, eating a sandwich he'd brought from home, reading something on his phone. Evelyn walked over. Ryan looked up, registered her presence, and something like amusement flickered across his face. "This seat taken?" Evelyn asked. "It is now." Ryan gestured to the chair across from him. Evelyn sat. Around them, conversations had died completely. 400 people pretending not to watch while absolutely watching. "You're causing a scene," Ryan said mildly, taking a bite of his sandwich. "I'm eating lunch. In the staff cafeteria, at a table with a janitor. People are going to talk." "Let them talk." Ryan studied her for a moment. "What are you doing, Ms. Cross?" "I told you, eating lunch." "No, I mean, what are you actually doing? This week you've been walking through the building, asking questions, changing policies. People are nervous." "People are always nervous around me." "True. But this is different. This is waiting for the other shoe to drop, nervous." Ryan set his sandwich down. "So I'm asking, what's the play here?" Evelyn stabbed at her salad. "You think everything is a play?" "I think everything you do is calculated. You don't make random decisions, so either this is strategy or something broke in you the other day when I told you that you were wrong." The bluntness should have been offensive. Instead, it was almost refreshing. "Maybe both," Evelyn said. Ryan nodded slowly. "Fair enough." They ate in silence for a moment. Around them, the cafeteria slowly returned to normal volume, though Evelyn could still feel the attention, the speculation. "Why did you defend Jennifer?" Evelyn asked. "The IT director?" "Yes." Ryan considered the question. Because she was being punished for something that wasn't her fault, and because everyone else in that room was just watching it happen. Someone needed to say it. Even if it cost you your job? Even then. That's either very brave or very stupid. Little of both, probably. Ryan took a drink of water. "Look, I've worked a lot of jobs for a lot of people. I've seen good bosses and terrible ones. The terrible ones all had one thing in common. They treated people like they were disposable, like fear was the same thing as respect. And you think I do that? I think you did that. This week, I'm not sure what you're doing." Evelyn set her fork down. "I'm trying to figure out if I built something impressive or something broken." "Can it be both?" She looked at him sharply. "What do you mean?" "I mean, Anderson Technologies is clearly successful, profitable, innovative, all that. But success doesn't mean healthy. You can win every quarter and still be destroying the foundation. Sometimes they're connected." Ryan leaned back in his chair. "I worked at Reynolds Manufacturing for 12 years. Every year we broke production records. Every year profits went up. And every year the floor got more dangerous because they cut safety corners to meet targets. You know how that story ends?" "How?" 3 people died in an equipment failure that wouldn't have happened if anyone had been allowed to say, "Slow down, something's wrong." But nobody did because saying that got you fired. So we just worked faster and faster until people died. Ryan's voice had gone flat, empty of emotion. Companies bankrupt now. Turns out lawsuits and criminal investigations are bad for business. Evelyn felt something cold settle in her stomach. You think we're heading for that? I think you've built a place where people are afraid to tell the truth, where the cost of honesty is too high, and that never ends well. So what would you do? If you were me? Ryan laughed, surprised. You're actually asking me? I'm actually asking. He thought about it, really thought, his eyes going distant. I'd start with the small stuff, learn people's names, say thank you when they do good work, ask how they're doing and actually listen to the answer. Create space where it's safe to make mistakes, because mistakes are how people learn. He met her eyes again. And I'd stop using fear as a management tool. Fear makes people obedient. It doesn't make them excellent. Fear keeps them sharp. Fear keeps them paralyzed. Sharp is different. Evelyn's phone buzzed. Marcus. Board meeting in 20. Need you. She stood, picking up her tray. Thank you for the conversation. That's it? What else did you expect? Ryan shrugged. I don't know. Maybe an argument? Maybe you telling me I'm wrong. Maybe you firing me after all. Would any of that change what you said? No. Then there's nothing to argue about. Evelyn started to walk away, then paused. Your daughter, Emma. How old is she? Ryan's expression shifted, protective, careful. 9. What does she think you do for a living? She knows I clean buildings. Doesn't bother her. Kids don't care about job titles. But you care. I care that I can pay rent and keep her fed and make sure she doesn't worry about things 9-year-olds shouldn't worry about. The title doesn't matter. Evelyn nodded slowly. You're a good father. I try to be. She walked away, leaving Ryan sitting there with his sandwich and his phone, and 400 people who would spend the rest of the day dissecting every word of the conversation they'd just witnessed. Boom. The board meeting was brutal. 3 hours of quarterly results, strategic projections, competitive analysis. Evelyn delivered every answer with her usual precision, defended every decision, presented every metric that proved Anderson Technologies was winning. But she kept thinking about Reynolds Manufacturing, about people who died because speaking up was too dangerous, about the difference between success and health. When the meeting ended and the board members filed out, Wilson Chen, chairman, primary investor, the man who'd backed Evelyn when she was just a brilliant engineer with a crazy idea, lingered. You seem distracted, he said. Evelyn closed her laptop. I'm fine. Evelyn, I've known you 15 years. You're never fine, but you're always focused. Today, you're somewhere else. Wilson sat down across from her, the room suddenly feeling smaller. What's going on? She could deflect, make excuses, maintain the armor. Instead, she heard herself say, Do you think I'm a good leader? Wilson blinked. What kind of question is that? An honest one. He leaned back, studying her with the shrewd intelligence that had made him one of the most successful venture capitalists in the Valley. You're an effective leader. You get results. You build profitable companies. You execute strategy flawlessly. That's not what I asked. Wilson sighed. No, it's not. He was quiet for a long moment. You want the truth? You're brilliant and terrifying in equal measure. You've built something extraordinary here. But you've also built a culture where people are afraid of you, and I'm not sure that's sustainable long term. Fear creates discipline. Fear creates compliance. There's a difference. Evelyn felt something crack a little wider in her chest. Why didn't you tell me this before? Would you have listened? No, she wouldn't have. What changed? Wilson asked. A janitor told me I was wrong. Wilson laughed, surprised. I'm sorry, what? Evelyn told him the story. The projector, Ryan's interruption, the termination memo she didn't sign, the conversations that had followed. All of it. When she finished, Wilson was quiet for a long time. You know what I think? He finally said. I think you've been so focused on being perfect that you forgot how to be human, and someone reminded you that there's a difference. Being human doesn't build billion-dollar companies. No. But being human means people will follow you even when things get hard. Being perfect just means they wait for you to fail. Wilson stood, gathering his materials. You're at a crossroads, Evelyn. You can keep being the most feared CEO in the industry, or you can try being the most respected, but you probably can't be both. He left, and Evelyn sat alone in the empty conference room, staring at the table where she'd destroyed countless presentations and careers and egos in the name of excellence. Wilson was right. Ryan was right. Even Jennifer, in her careful, technical way, was right. The question was, what was Evelyn going to do about it? That night, she stayed until 11 p.m., working through the audit Jennifer had completed ahead of schedule. The report was devastating. 47 system failures in the last 2 years that could have been prevented with proper maintenance. 32 employee complaints about equipment or conditions that had been marked low priority and ignored. 19 resignations by high-performing employees who cited toxic culture as the primary reason for leaving. Evelyn sat in her dark office, reading through exit interview after exit interview, seeing the same phrases repeated like a mantra. Afraid to make mistakes. No room for error. Constant pressure and fear. Felt dispensable. She'd built this. Every word, every complaint, every talented person who'd walked away rather than continue working in an environment where perfection was mandatory and humanity was weakness. She'd built a machine that broke people and called it excellence. Her phone rang. Emma Cole, according to the caller ID. No, that was Ryan's emergency contact. Same last name. Evelyn answered without thinking. Hello? Hi. A young voice, uncertain. Is this Miss Cross, the boss lady? This is Evelyn Cross. Who is this? I'm Emma. My dad's Ryan. He's the janitor. A pause. He left his phone in the cafeteria, and the lady there saw your number was the last call, and I need to reach him because I'm at my friend's house, and I need picked up, but I don't know this phone number, and... Slow down, Evelyn said gently. Your father left his phone at work? Yeah, he always does that. Gets distracted cleaning stuff. Emma sounded exasperated in the way only children could about their parents' flaws. Can you tell him Emma needs picked up at 847 Brighton Street, Sarah's house? I can do that. What's your father's cell number? I don't know it. It's programmed in my phone, but my phone died. Evelyn checked the building system. Ryan was currently logged in, working the 58th floor. I'll find him and give him the message. Thank you. Relief flooded the young voice. You're really nice. My dad said you were kind of scary, but you seem nice. Your dad said I was scary? Well, yeah, but he says that about dentists too, and dentists are helpful, so I think scary can be helpful. Despite everything, Evelyn almost smiled. That's a very mature perspective. I'm 9. I'm basically almost grown up. Of course, I'll make sure your father gets the message right away. Thanks, boss lady. The call ended. Evelyn sat there for a moment, phone in hand, thinking about a 9-year-old girl who thought scary could be helpful, who had a father that forgot his phone because he was focused on doing his job well, who was basically almost grown up. She pulled up the building directory, found Ryan's current location, and did something else she'd never done. She went to find him herself. The 58th floor at 11 p.m. was quiet and dim, emergency lighting casting long shadows. Evelyn found Ryan in one of the corner offices, carefully watering a plant someone had left on the desk. He looked up when she entered, surprised. Ms. Cross, everything okay? Your daughter called. You left your phone in the cafeteria. Ryan's eyes widened. Emma called you? She needs to be picked up, 847 Brighton Street, Sarah's house. Oh, man. Ryan set down the watering can, checking his watch. I'm not off until 6 a.m. She knows she's supposed to call Mrs. Chen next door if... He stopped, running a hand through his hair. The phone. Right, can't call Mrs. Chen without the phone. Go, Evelyn said. What? Go pick up your daughter. I'll sign off on your hours. Ryan stared at her. You're letting me leave early? Your 9-year-old daughter is stranded at a friend's house and needs her father. Yes, I'm letting you leave early. Evelyn pulled out her phone. What's your cell number? I'll have her call you directly. Ryan rattled off the number, still looking confused. Evelyn sent it to the cafeteria phone. Go, she said again. Thank you. Ryan grabbed his jacket from the cart. I'll make up the hours tomorrow. Don't worry about it. He started to leave, then turned back. Ms. Cross? Emma said you were nice. She also said I was scary. Well, yeah, but helpful scary, like dentists. Ryan almost smiled. High praise from a 9-year-old. He left, and Evelyn stood alone in the dim office, surrounded by the silence of a building that never truly slept. She looked at the plant Ryan had been watering, some kind of succulent, neglected, and half-dead, that he'd been nursing back to health. The kind of small kindness nobody noticed, the kind of invisible labor that kept things alive. Evelyn walked back to her office, but instead of working, she stood at the window and watched the city breathe below her, thinking about daughters and fathers and the difference between scary and helpful. And somewhere in the growing crack in her chest, something that felt almost like hope began to take root. The call came at 9:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, 3 weeks after Evelyn had sent Ryan home to pick up his daughter. She was still in her office reviewing the implementation timeline for the facilities upgrades Jennifer had proposed, when her desk phone lit up with an internal emergency code she'd only seen twice in 8 years. Building security. Priority 1. Cross, she answered. Ma'am, we have a situation. The security chief's voice was tight with controlled urgency. Full electrical failure on floors 40 through 75. Backup generators didn't engage. We're running on emergency battery only, and we've got approximately 200 people still in the building. Evelyn's mind shifted instantly into crisis mode. Elevators? Dead. Stairwells have emergency lighting, but it's dark and people are panicking. We're trying to organize evacuation, but a burst of radio chatter cut him off. Ma'am, we need you down here. People are asking for leadership and my team is spread thin. She was already moving, grabbing her phone and jacket. I'm coming down. Where's the command center? Main lobby. And Ms. Cross, the board members who were in the executive dining room, they're asking for you specifically. Of course they were. The board had been there for a dinner meeting, and now they were trapped in a dark building while the CEO who promised perfection scrambled to manage a crisis that shouldn't have happened. Evelyn took the executive stairs, the only route down with her access card, and emerged into chaos. The lobby was lit by emergency floods that cast harsh shadows and created more darkness than light. People clustered in groups, some sitting on the floor with their phones out, others pressed against the windows looking out at the lit buildings around them like prisoners watching freedom. The security team was trying to maintain order, but 200 scared people in the dark created its own gravity, pulling toward panic. She saw Wilson Chen immediately, standing with the other board members near the main desk, looking thunderous. Evelyn? His voice could have cut steel. What the hell is happening? Electrical failure. We're working on it. Working on it? We've been sitting in the dark for 20 minutes while your security team tries to figure out if the stairs are safe. This is unacceptable. A woman Evelyn didn't recognize pushed forward. I have a heart condition. I can't walk down 70 flights of stairs. What's your plan for people who can't evacuate? I need to get home to my kids, someone else called out. My phone's dying and my wife doesn't know where I am. Is the building on fire? Are we safe here? What about the people on the upper floors? The questions came rapid fire, voices rising, the crowd's fear feeding itself. Evelyn felt the weight of it. 200 people looking to her for answers she didn't have, for reassurance she couldn't give, for leadership in a situation that had spiraled beyond her control. This was what happened when perfection failed. This was what happened when the machine broke. The security chief appeared at her elbow. Ma'am, we need to start moving people down the stairs. The battery backup will last maybe another hour. Then it's complete darkness. What about people who can't manage the stairs? Fire department is en route, but they're dealing with multiple outages across downtown. We're low priority because there's no active threat. Could be an hour before they get here. Wilson stepped closer, voice dropping to a harsh whisper. You need to get control of this situation, now, before this turns into a lawsuit factory. Evelyn opened her mouth to respond, but a voice cut through the chaos with unexpected calm. Folks, can I get everyone's attention, please? Ryan Cole stood on one of the lobby benches, a flashlight in one hand, still wearing his custodial uniform. He must have been working the upper floors when the power died. The crowd didn't quiet immediately, but the novelty of a janitor standing on furniture speaking with authority created a pocket of silence that spread outward. My name's Ryan. I work maintenance here. I know everyone's scared and confused, and that's completely normal. But we're going to get through this calmly and safely if we work together. His voice carried without shouting, the practiced projection of someone who'd spoken over machinery, who knew how to command attention without demanding it. First thing, this building is not on fire. There is no gas leak. The structure is sound. We're safe here. The only problem is the lights are out. What about the people upstairs? Someone called out. I just came from the 63rd floor. Everyone up there is safe. Emergency lights are working in all the stairwells. We've got people helping guide folks down. Ryan looked across the crowd, making eye contact with individuals. Here's what's going to happen. We're going to organize into groups. Anyone who has medical conditions or mobility issues, you're group 1. You'll wait here in the lobby where it's safe and comfortable until the fire department arrives with equipment to help you down. Everyone else will move in waves down the stairs with guides who have flashlights. He made it sound simple, reasonable, like this was a planned drill rather than a crisis. A woman near the front, late 50s, professional attire, raised her hand like this was a classroom. How long will this take? Depends on how cooperative everyone is. If we stay calm and move steadily, probably 45 minutes to get everyone down. If we panic and rush, probably longer and someone gets hurt. Ryan swept his flashlight across the crowd. Show of hands. Who here has a flashlight on their phone? About half the crowd raised their hands. Great, you're our guides. Every person with a flashlight takes 2 people without. You go slow, you stay together, you make sure nobody gets left behind. Think of it like a buddy system from summer camp. Someone actually laughed, a nervous, surprised sound, but real. Ryan jumped down from the bench and started organizing people with the brisk efficiency of someone who'd done emergency coordination before. He moved through the crowd, identifying who needed help, who could help, creating structure out of chaos. Evelyn watched, momentarily paralyzed by the strangeness of it. This janitor, this man she'd almost fired, managing a crisis with more effectiveness than her entire security team combined. Miss Cross, Ryan appeared at her elbow. I need access to the mechanical floors. Backup generators should have kicked in automatically. If they didn't, something's wrong and I might be able to fix it. You know how to work industrial generators? Worked with them for 12 years at Reynolds? These are different models, but the principles are the same. He was already moving toward the elevator banks. I need your executive override to access the sub-basement. Evelyn followed him to the security desk. The chief looked uncertain. Sir, the mechanical floors aren't safe during a power outage. There's no light, and if you don't know the layout... I know the layout. I clean those floors 3 nights a week. Ryan held out his hand for the access card. And right now, we've got 200 people trapped in a dark building because the backup systems failed. So we can either wait for the power company to maybe show up in the next few hours, or we can try to fix it ourselves. The security chief looked at Evelyn. She made a decision that 3 weeks ago would have been unthinkable. Give him access. The chief handed over a master key card. Ryan took it and headed for the stairwell door, flashlight already out. Evelyn followed. Ma'am, you don't need to... Yes, I do. She pushed through the door after him. The stairwell was dark except for the small emergency lights every 10 feet, dim and yellowish, creating pools of shadow between them. Ryan moved quickly, taking the stairs down with the confidence of someone who knew exactly where he was going. You've done this before, Evelyn said, struggling to keep up in heels designed for boardrooms, not emergency evacuations. Evacuation coordination? Yeah. Had a fire at Reynolds that got everyone real familiar with emergency procedures. His voice echoed in the concrete shaft. Lost power a few times, too. Once spent 8 hours hand-cranking a backup generator to keep the refrigeration units running. Learned a lot that day. They descended 3 flights, the air getting cooler and more industrial. Ryan pushed through a door marked Authorized Personnel Only, and they entered the mechanical sub-basement, a maze of pipes and conduits and massive equipment that kept the building alive. It was completely dark except for their flashlights. Ryan moved through it like he had a map in his head, navigating between equipment that hummed and ticked and breathed. There, he said, flashlight landing on 3 massive generators in a row. These should have engaged the second the main power dropped. He moved closer, examining the control panels. Evelyn stood back, feeling useless in a way she'd never experienced. This was a world she didn't understand, Mechanical, physical, the literal guts of the building she worked in but never saw. Found it. Ryan's voice carried grim satisfaction. Safety override is engaged. Someone hit the emergency shutoff. Why would anyone do that? Probably didn't mean to. These switches are supposed to be covered, but he pried open a panel. Yeah, the cover's been broken for a while. Someone probably bumped it accidentally. Maybe a cleaning crew, maybe maintenance. Just wrong place, wrong time. He studied the generators, flashlight moving across gauges and switches. I can reset these, but they're going to be loud when they kick in. And there's a chance they don't work at all if something else is damaged. Do it. Ryan looked at her. If I'm wrong and I make things worse, you won't make things worse. We're already in the dark. Evelyn moved closer. And even if you're wrong, at least you tried. That's more than anyone else has done. Something passed across his face. Recognition, maybe, or surprise that she'd say something like that. He turned back to the generators and started working. Evelyn watched him move with practiced efficiency, checking connections, resetting breakers, his hands confident on equipment that looked like it belonged in a factory. This wasn't custodial work. This was skilled labor, technical knowledge, the kind of expertise that came from years of actual hands-on experience. Why are you working as a janitor? The question came out before she could stop it. Ryan didn't pause in his work. Because it was the first job that would hire me after 14 months unemployed, and because it has health insurance for Emma. But you're clearly overqualified. Overqualified doesn't mean much when you've got a gap in your resume and references from a company that went bankrupt. He tightened something with a wrench he'd pulled from his pocket. Plus, people have this idea that if you did one thing for a long time, that's all you can do. I was a machinery operator, so that's all I could be. The fact that I understood the systems and could fix them when they broke didn't fit the box on the application. That's idiotic. Ryan laughed, short and sharp. Welcome to the job market for regular people, Ms. Cross, where what you can do matters less than what your last title was. Evelyn thought about all the resumes she'd rejected over the years for exactly those reasons. Employment gaps, wrong backgrounds, career changes that didn't follow a clear narrative from undergraduate degree to executive success. How many people like Ryan had she dismissed without a second thought? Almost there, Ryan said, working a series of switches in sequence. When these kick in, it's going to sound like the building's exploding. Don't panic. I don't panic. Everyone panics sometimes, Ms. Cross. They just call it different things. He positioned his hands on two switches simultaneously. Ready? Do it. Ryan threw both switches. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then the generators roared to life with a sound like thunder trapped in concrete. The vibration shook the floor, rattled the pipes, made Evelyn's teeth ache. Lights flickered and died, flickered again, then blazed to life. Harsh industrial fluorescence that made them both squint after the darkness. A series of mechanical thuds echoed through the building as systems engaged in sequence. HVAC, elevators, the thousands of electrical components that made a modern building function. Ryan watched the generators tension in his shoulders, waiting to see if his fix would hold. The noise stabilized. The lights stayed on. The building breathed. We're back, Ryan said quietly. Evelyn pulled out her phone. Signal restored. Messages flooding in. Security confirming power restoration. Wilson Chen demanding an explanation. Marcus asking if she was safe. She ignored all of them and looked at Ryan, who was carefully closing the generator panels, making sure everything was secure before they left. You just saved this company millions in liability and reputation damage, she said. Ryan shrugged, wiping his hands on his coveralls. Just did what needed doing. Most people wouldn't know how. Most people were never machinery operators who had to fix equipment in the dark because calling a technician would shut down production and cost everyone their bonuses. He turned to face her, and in the harsh light she could see the tiredness around his eyes, the gray in his hair, the years of hard work written in his posture. You learn to solve problems when the alternative is worse. They stood in the mechanical room, surrounded by the restored heartbeat of the building, and Evelyn felt something fundamental shift in her understanding of the world. All the credentials, all the elite education, all the strategic planning, none of it had mattered when the lights went out. What mattered was a man who knew how to fix things, What mattered was someone who stayed calm when everyone else panicked. What mattered was the invisible knowledge, the uncredentialed expertise, the kind of capability that came from doing real work in the real world where failure had real consequences. "Come on," Ryan said, heading for the stairs. "We should get back up there before people start worrying the generators are going to explode or something." They climbed back to the lobby, where the restored lights had transformed fear into relief. People were laughing, some were crying, everyone was talking at once. The security team was organizing the evacuation, now calm and orderly, people heading for the exits in groups, checking on each other. Wilson Chen spotted Evelyn and crossed the lobby with the force of a freight train. "We need to talk, now." "I agree. This is unacceptable. The backup systems should be tested regularly. There should be redundancies. This kind of failure was my fault," Evelyn said. Wilson stopped mid-sentence. "What?" "The generators were maintained according to schedule. The failure was a mechanical accident, someone accidentally hitting an override switch. But the fact that we weren't prepared for this kind of crisis, that's on me. I prioritized other things and assumed the infrastructure would just work." Ryan had disappeared into the crowd, helping people find their belongings, making sure everyone had a way home. Evelyn watched him move through the lobby, invisible again now that the crisis was over. "How did you restore power?" Wilson asked. "I didn't. Ryan Cole did. The janitor." Wilson's expression did something complicated. "The same janitor who told you that you were wrong?" "The same one." "And you trusted him to fix our generators?" "I trusted him because he knew what he was doing, unlike everyone else standing around hoping someone would solve the problem for them." Evelyn met Wilson's eyes. "Including me." The chairman was quiet for a long moment, studying her face. "You're different. I'm trying to be. Is it working?" Evelyn thought about the last 3 weeks, the conversations with staff she'd never spoken to before, the equipment upgrades she'd approved, the small changes in how she moved through the building, learning names, saying thank you, creating space for people to be honest instead of just obedient. "I don't know yet," she admitted, "but I know what I was building before wasn't sustainable. And I know that when everything broke tonight, the person who fixed it was someone I almost fired for telling me the truth." Wilson nodded slowly. "You realize the board is going to want answers, reports, explanations for how this happened. I'll give them answers. Real ones, not just excuses." Evelyn pulled out her phone. "And I'm implementing new protocols. Regular infrastructure audits by people who actually understand the systems, not just administrators checking boxes. Investment in redundancy and training, and a culture where people can flag problems before they become disasters. That's going to be expensive. Not as expensive as a lawsuit when someone gets hurt because we cut corners." Evelyn started typing notes. "Or the reputation hit when people find out Anderson Technologies can't even keep its own building powered." Wilson almost smiled. 3 weeks ago, you would have found someone to blame and buried this before morning. 3 weeks ago, I thought control meant perfection. Now I think it means being honest about what's broken and fixing it before it breaks you." She looked across the lobby and found Ryan again, now talking to an elderly woman who looked shaken, his voice low and calming, making sure she had someone to walk her to her car. He caught Evelyn's eye for just a moment, nodded once, then went back to helping. Wilson followed her gaze. "You should promote him." "He won't accept it. I already tried." "Why not?" "Because he values stability more than advancement. Because his daughter needs consistency. Because—" Evelyn paused, understanding clicking into place. "Because he's already learned that chasing titles and status can cost you everything that matters. So he chooses differently now." The lobby was nearly empty now, just the last few people gathering their things, the security team doing final sweeps. The crisis was over. The building was safe. And somewhere in the resolution, something in Evelyn had broken and reformed into a different shape. "I need to write a report for the board," Wilson said. "What do you want me to tell them?" Evelyn thought about all the ways she could frame this: the corporate speak, the strategic narrative, the careful positioning that would minimize her exposure and maximize the appearance of control. Then she thought about Ryan saying that respect without honesty was just fear in a nice suit. "Tell them the truth," she said. Tell them our infrastructure failed because we didn't prioritize maintenance. Tell them our emergency protocols weren't adequate because we'd never tested them under real conditions. Tell them the building was saved by a night janitor who knew more about our systems than our entire facilities department. And tell them that's going to change." Wilson raised an eyebrow. "You're sure about that approach?" "No, but I'm tired of pretending everything is perfect when it's not. That doesn't build anything real. It just builds a bigger disaster waiting to happen." The chairman nodded, something like approval in his expression. "I'll be in touch tomorrow. We'll have damage control to manage." He left, and Evelyn stood alone in the restored lobby, watching the last few people trickle out into the night. The building hummed around her, lights blazing, elevators running, every system functioning exactly as designed, as if the last hour hadn't happened, as if the darkness had been a dream. But it had happened, and Evelyn had seen what broke when the machine failed. She'd seen what saved them, and it wasn't the systems she'd built, or the culture she'd created, or the perfection she'd demanded. It was a man who knew how to stay calm in the dark, a man who valued competence over credentials, a man who'd already lost enough that fear couldn't control him anymore. Ryan emerged from the stairwell, his cart loaded with supplies, ready to finish his shift like nothing extraordinary had occurred. He saw Evelyn and altered course slightly, approaching with that same steady calm. "Everyone's clear," he said. "Building's secure. Security team is doing final rounds." "Thank you for everything tonight," Ryan shrugged. "Just doing what needed doing." "It was more than that. You organized 200 panicking people, restored critical infrastructure, and made sure everyone got home safe. That's not just anything." "Maybe." He adjusted his cart. "But it's also just what you do when things go wrong. You either help or you don't. I chose to help." "Why?" The question came out raw, honest. "Why do you keep helping when you have every reason not to? When this place has given you nothing but—" "Because the place isn't the people," Ryan interrupted gently. "The company might not care about me, but the person stuck in a dark stairwell who's scared? They're not the company. They're just someone who needs help, and I can't walk past that." Evelyn felt something crack wider in her chest, the foundation of ice she'd built over 20 years, the armor of perfection that had kept her safe and alone and successful and empty. "I'm sorry," she said. Ryan tilted his head. "For what?" "For building a place where people are afraid. For creating a culture where someone like you has to be brave just to tell the truth. For—" she gestured at the building around them. "For not seeing any of this until it broke." "It didn't break, Ms. Cross. It just showed you what was already there." Ryan's voice was kind but firm. "The question is what you do with that information." "I don't know yet." "That's fair. Change is hard, especially when you've been successful doing things the old way." He started to push his cart toward the elevators. "But I'll tell you what I learned when my whole life fell apart and I had to rebuild from nothing." "What's that?" "Being broken doesn't make you weak. Being afraid to admit you're broken, that's what makes you weak." Ryan looked back at her. "You're not weak, Ms. Cross. You're just scared. And scared people make scared choices. But you don't have to keep choosing that way." He left, the squeak of his cartwheels fading as he headed back to work, back to the invisible labor that kept the visible world functioning. Evelyn stood in the empty lobby, surrounded by the restored perfection of her empire, and felt the truth of his words settle into her bones. She was scared. Scared of being vulnerable, scared of being wrong, scared that without the armor of perfection and fear, she'd be nothing. But tonight, in the dark, she'd been nothing. And Ryan Cole had been everything. The choice was clear. She could keep building with fear, or she could try building with truth. The second option terrified her, which, she was starting to understand, meant it was probably the right one. Evelyn walked to the elevator, rode up to her office, and spent the rest of the night writing a different kind of report than she'd ever written before. One that started with 3 words she'd never put in writing to the board: "I was wrong." And somehow, in the admission, she felt more powerful than she had in years. The board meeting on Thursday morning had the quality of a tribunal. Evelyn arrived 15 minutes early, unusual for her, as she typically timed her entrances to assert dominance, and found the conference room already occupied. Wilson Chen sat at the head of the table with 4 other board members arranged like judges. The morning light cut through the windows at sharp angles, creating stark divisions between shadow and brightness. Evelyn. Wilson's voice was neutral, giving nothing away. Thank you for coming early. She set down her portfolio, noting the copies of her report already distributed around the table. The document she'd written at 3 a.m., fueled by coffee and the strange clarity that came from finally admitting failure. 12 pages of unvarnished truth about infrastructure neglect, cultural toxicity, and systematic blindness to problems that everyone could see except her. Margaret Torres, the board member who'd made her fortune in manufacturing before pivoting to venture capital, tapped the report with one manicured finger. This is quite the confession. It's an accurate assessment, Evelyn said, sitting down without waiting for invitation. It's a liability nightmare, Robert Kim countered. He was corporate law, made his career defending companies against exactly the kind of admissions Evelyn had just committed to writing. You've documented every failure point in our infrastructure and culture. If anyone sues, we just handed them the evidence. If anyone sues, they'd find the evidence anyway. At least this way we're ahead of it. That's not how corporate defense works. I'm not interested in defense. Evelyn met his eyes directly. I'm interested in fixing what's broken. And you can't fix problems you won't admit exist. Margaret leaned forward. Walk us through Tuesday night. What actually happened? Evelyn did, giving them the unfiltered version. The panic, her own helplessness, Ryan's intervention, the generators. She didn't minimize her failure or inflate the heroics, just the facts, clean and stark. When she finished, the room was quiet. David Okonkwo, who'd been silent until now, spoke with his characteristic precision. So our building was saved by a janitor you almost fired 3 weeks ago for insubordination. Yes. And you're telling us this because? Because it's the truth. And because it illustrates exactly what I've been building here. A culture so toxic that the most competent person in the building during a crisis was someone we pay minimum wage to empty trash cans. Robert shook his head. You're being melodramatic. One incident doesn't... It's not one incident. Evelyn pulled out her tablet, bringing up the data Jennifer had compiled. In the last 2 years, we've had 47 preventable system failures. We've lost 19 high-performing employees who cited culture as their reason for leaving. Our internal employee satisfaction scores are in the 32nd percentile industry-wide. Our turnover rate is double the sector average. And when I walk through this building, people are afraid of me. You're the CEO, Margaret said. People are supposed to respect you. There's a difference between respect and fear. I've been confusing the two for 8 years. Wilson had been watching her carefully throughout the exchange, his expression unreadable. What are you proposing? Evelyn took a breath. This was the moment, the point where she either committed to change or retreated back into the comfortable armor of perfection. Complete cultural overhaul, starting with me. She pulled up a new document on the screen. New protocols for how we handle mistakes, investigation instead of immediate punishment. Open reporting systems where staff can flag problems without fear of retaliation. Regular town halls where I answer questions from anyone in the company, not just executives. Investment in infrastructure maintenance as a core priority, not an afterthought. And mandatory training for all leadership on creating psychologically safe work environments. That's expensive, David said. Not as expensive as losing our best talent to competitors. Or the next lawsuit. Or the reputation damage when the story gets out that our own janitor knows more about our systems than our executives. Robert's jaw tightened. That story doesn't need to get out. I'm not suggesting we advertise it, but I'm also not going to pretend it didn't happen. Evelyn looked around the table. You all know my track record. I've built this company into a billion-dollar enterprise through discipline and standards. And I still believe in those things. But I've also built something else. A culture where people are too afraid to tell me when something's wrong. And that almost destroyed us Tuesday night. Margaret studied the proposal on her tablet. These changes will take months to implement, maybe years to see results. Yes. The short-term impact on productivity could be significant if people interpret this as permission to slack off. That's a risk, but the current system isn't sustainable. We're hemorrhaging talent and one crisis away from disaster at any given moment. Wilson spoke quietly. You realize this is a complete reversal of everything you've built here. Not everything, just the parts that were breaking us. Evelyn set down her tablet. Look, I can give you the strategic justification. Better retention saves recruitment costs, higher employee satisfaction correlates with innovation, all the research that supports this approach. But the truth is simpler than that. What I built wasn't working, and I was too proud to admit it until a janitor had the courage to tell me I was wrong. The silence that followed felt like standing on a cliff edge. Then Wilson said, I want quarterly metrics on every initiative. Employee satisfaction scores, retention rates, incident reports, everything. And if this doesn't show measurable improvement in 6 months, we revisit. Agreed. Margaret nodded slowly. I'll support this. But Evelyn, if you're going to change the culture, you need to actually change. Not just implement new policies and then revert to old behaviors when things get stressful. I know. Do you? Because transformation isn't a memo. It's daily choice to do things differently, even when the old ways feel safer. The words hit harder than Evelyn expected. Margaret was right. She could implement every policy in the world, but if she didn't fundamentally change how she showed up, none of it would matter. The vote was 4 in favor, 1 abstention from Robert, who clearly thought this was corporate suicide but didn't want to be on record opposing it. The meeting ended and the board members filed out, leaving Evelyn alone with Wilson. That took courage, he said. It took failure. Courage would have been changing things before they broke. Wilson gathered his materials. You know what happens next, don't you? You're going to walk into the executive meeting this afternoon and announce these changes, and half your leadership team is going to think you've lost your mind. Probably. They're going to test you, push boundaries, see if you really mean it or if this is just temporary. I know. And when someone makes a mistake, and they will, your first instinct is going to be to come down on them with everything you've got, because that's what you've trained yourself to do for 20 years. Evelyn stood, looking out at the city. So what do I do? You remember why you're changing. You remember Tuesday night. You remember that the person who saved your company was the one you almost destroyed for telling you the truth. Wilson paused at the door. And you give yourself permission to be imperfect while you're learning to lead differently. He left, and Evelyn spent the next hour preparing for the hardest meeting of her career. Sad. The executive team assembled at 2 p.m. with the wary energy of people who'd heard rumors but didn't know which disaster to prepare for. Marcus Chen arrived first, as always, followed by Victoria, James, Sarah, David, and the other department heads who made up the leadership layer of Anderson Technologies. They took their usual seats, arranged in the hierarchy they'd learned through years of careful observation. Evelyn stood at the head of the table, feeling the weight of what she was about to do. Thank you all for coming, she began, and even those 4 words felt different, thanking people instead of simply expecting their presence. I want to talk about Tuesday night. The room tensed. As you all know, we had a complete power failure that trapped approximately 200 people in the building. The backup generators failed to engage. Our emergency protocols proved inadequate, and in the crisis I was effectively useless. Marcus blinked. Victoria's pen stopped mid-note. Sarah actually looked up from her phone. No one had ever heard Evelyn Cross say she was useless at anything. The building was saved by Ryan Cole, a night custodian who knew more about our infrastructure than anyone in facilities management. He organized the evacuation, kept people calm, and manually restored the generators. He did this not because it was his job, but because he saw people who needed help and he knew how to provide it. Evelyn pulled up a document on the screen, the same one she'd shown the board. This is a comprehensive assessment of our cultural and operational failures. I'm going to walk you through it, and then I'm going to tell you how we're going to fix it. And I need you to understand something before we start. She paused, making eye contact with each person. This is not a suggestion. This is not open for debate. This is what we're doing. The only question is whether you're willing to be part of it. She spent the next 40 minutes detailing everything: the infrastructure neglect, the toxic culture, the fear-based management that had driven away talent and created an environment where problems festered in silence. The executives listened with expressions ranging from shock to discomfort, to carefully concealed satisfaction that someone was finally saying what they'd all been thinking. When Evelyn finished, Marcus was the first to speak. With respect, ma'am, some of these changes seem drastic. We've been successful with our current approach. Why fix what isn't broken? It is broken, Marcus. It broke Tuesday night. It's been breaking for years. We just didn't notice because we were too busy hitting quarterly targets to see the foundation crumbling. Victoria raised her hand tentatively, a gesture so incongruous in an executive meeting that it almost made Evelyn smile. Yes, Victoria? These new reporting systems, where anyone can flag problems without retaliation. How do we prevent that from becoming a complaint factory? How do we maintain standards if people think they can make excuses for poor performance? It was a fair question, the exact concern Evelyn herself had. We maintain standards by being clear about what we're measuring. Mistakes in pursuit of excellence are different from negligence or incompetence. Someone who tries something innovative and fails learns something valuable. Someone who doesn't try at all learns nothing. Evelyn sat down, another break from pattern, making herself level with them. And we trust our leaders to know the difference, which means trusting you to know the difference. James Okoye, the CFO, pulled up a calculator on his tablet. The infrastructure investments alone are going to run 8 figures over the next 2 years. The training programs, the new personnel, the system upgrades. Where's that money coming from? Operations budget. We're going to do fewer things, but do them better. Cut the marginal projects and invest in foundation. The board approved this? 4-0, 1 abstention. That got their attention. If the board was behind it, this wasn't a whim. This was real. Sarah Martinez, who'd been quiet until now, spoke carefully. What about our public image? If word gets out that we're doing this because we had a major failure, then we control the narrative. We don't hide the failure, but we focus on the response. Anderson Technologies doesn't pretend to be perfect. We acknowledge problems and fix them. That's a stronger brand than pretending nothing ever goes wrong. David Brennan, the legal counsel, looked pained. From a liability perspective, I know I've documented everything that could be used against us, and I've done it anyway because honesty is more important than protection. Evelyn met his eyes. I need you to trust me on this, David. We're not going to lawsuit-proof our way to excellence. We're going to build something actually worth defending. The room absorbed this in silence. Then Marcus said quietly, What do you need from us? Honesty. When you see problems, tell me. When I'm reverting to old patterns, call me on it. When someone on your team makes a mistake, investigate it instead of punishing it. And when you don't know how to do this, because none of us have been trained for this, admit it and ask for help. That's asking a lot, Victoria said. I know, and I'm asking it anyway. Evelyn stood again, moving to the window. Here's what I learned Tuesday night. When everything broke and all my authority and control meant nothing, the person who saved us was someone I'd almost fired for insubordination. The person who had the courage to tell me I was wrong. The person who valued competence over credentials and truth over politics. She turned back to face them. I don't want to build a company where that person is an anomaly. I want to build a company where that person is the standard, where people tell the truth even when it's hard, where competence matters more than hierarchy, where we trust each other enough to be honest about what's broken so we can actually fix it. The executives looked at each other, having the silent conversation that happened in glances and subtle shifts of posture. Finally, Marcus nodded. Okay, I'm in, but I'm going to need help. I've been managing through fear for 5 years because that's what worked here. I don't know how to do it differently. Then we learn together. Evelyn felt something unknot in her chest. Anyone else? One by one, they voiced commitment, some enthusiastic, some cautious, but all of them willing to try. All except Robert Morrison, the VP of Operations who'd been silent throughout the meeting. Robert? Evelyn prompted. He stood, gathering his materials with deliberate precision. With all due respect, Ms. Cross, I don't think this is going to work. We've built a successful company on discipline and accountability. These changes are going to create chaos, lower standards, and ultimately damage everything we've achieved. You might be right, Evelyn said calmly. Robert blinked, clearly expecting an argument. You might be absolutely right that this fails. That's a risk I'm taking, but I know for certain that the old way was failing, even if it looked like success. So I'm choosing a different kind of risk. Then I'm choosing to exit. I'll have my resignation on your desk by end of day." He left, and the room went silent. Evelyn felt the old instinct rise, the urge to see his departure as betrayal, as disloyalty, as something that required punishment, or at least anger. Instead, she said, "Robert's been a valuable contributor to this company for 7 years. His choice to leave is valid, and will support his transition. Marcus, work with HR on the succession plan for operations. Let's make sure we give Robert a good exit and set his replacement up for success." Marcus nodded, something shifting in his expression, understanding maybe that this new approach applied even to people who disagreed. The meeting ended and the executives filed out, their faces showing the peculiar mix of hope and uncertainty that came with tectonic change. Evelyn stayed in the conference room, looking at the empty chair where Robert had sat, and wondered how many other people would choose to leave rather than change. Her phone buzzed. A message from Helen in HR. "Ryan Cole requesting meeting. Says it's about Tuesday night, available this afternoon?" Evelyn typed back, "Send him up at 4. She had 2 hours to figure out what to say to the man who'd saved her company and shown her what leadership actually looked like. Ryan arrived at exactly 4 p.m., still in his custodial uniform, looking uncomfortable in the executive suite's polished opulence. Kevin showed him in with barely concealed curiosity. The janitor getting a private audience with the CEO was unprecedented. "Mr. Cole," Evelyn said, standing to shake his hand. "Thank you for coming up." "Ms. Cross." His handshake was firm, brief. "Your assistant said you wanted to see me." "I did. Please, sit." Ryan sat in the same chair Jennifer had occupied weeks ago, but unlike her, he didn't look afraid, just alert, watchful. "I wanted to thank you properly," Evelyn began, "for Tuesday night. What you did, organizing the evacuation, fixing the generators, you saved this company from a disaster that could have been catastrophic. Just did what needed doing. It was more than that. You showed leadership and competence that exceeded anyone in my actual leadership team." Evelyn slid a folder across the desk. "Which is why I want to offer you a position. Facilities manager, direct report to operations, salary of $90,000 with full benefits. You'd be responsible for building systems, maintenance coordination, and emergency protocols." Ryan didn't open the folder. "That's generous?" "It's appropriate for your skills." "Maybe, but I'm going to say no." Evelyn had anticipated this, but it still stung slightly. "Can I ask why?" "Because Emma needs stability, not another job change. Because I just started figuring out this schedule and how to make it work with her school and aftercare. Because," he paused, choosing words carefully, "because I've learned that chasing bigger titles and better positions doesn't actually make life better. It just makes it more complicated. You're overqualified for custodial work." "According to what metric?" "I clean buildings well. I know the systems. I do good work." "That's not overqualified. It's just qualified differently than you're used to measuring." Evelyn leaned back, studying him. "You really don't care about advancement." "I care about my daughter being safe and happy. I care about being able to pay rent and buy groceries without stress. I care about doing work that matters, even if nobody notices." Ryan finally looked at the folder. "That job you're offering, it matters. But it's also 60-hour weeks and weekend emergencies and the kind of pressure that would mean less time with Emma. And I already gave up too much time with people I love for jobs that didn't care about me. I'm not doing that again." The words settled between them with the weight of hard-earned wisdom. "What happened?" Evelyn asked quietly. "You mentioned losing more important things than jobs. What did you lose?" Ryan was silent for a long moment, and pain moved behind his eyes. Old but not healed, the kind that changed the architecture of a person. "My wife. Cancer. 2 years ago." His voice went flat, emotionless in the way of people reciting facts too painful to feel. 16 months from diagnosis to death. And in that time, I learned real fast what mattered and what didn't. Turns out most of what I thought was important, career, status, proving myself, none of it mattered when she was dying. What mattered was time. Being present. Not missing moments because I was chasing some idea of success. Evelyn felt her throat tighten. "I'm sorry." "Me too, but it taught me something valuable. Ryan met her eyes. It taught me that you can't get time back. Once it's gone, it's gone. So I choose very carefully how I spend it now. And spending it climbing corporate ladders for people who see me as replaceable? That's not how I want to use the time I have left. The office felt very quiet, insulated from the city noise by thick glass and expensive architecture. Your daughter is lucky to have you, Evelyn said. I'm lucky to have her. She's the reason I keep going. The reason I took this job even though it pays a fraction of what I used to make. The reason I show up every night and do good work even when nobody's watching. Ryan stood. Look, I appreciate the offer, really, but I'm okay where I am. I'd rather be a good janitor and a good father than a mediocre manager with a fancy title. What if you could be a good facilities manager and a good father? Maybe, but I don't trust it enough to risk what I've built with Emma. She needs consistency. She needs a dad who's present, not another corporate success story who's never home. Evelyn stood as well, recognizing the finality in his posture. If you change your mind, I won't. But thank you. He started toward the door, then paused. Can I say something that's probably out of line? You've never let that stop you before. Ryan almost smiled. Fair point. Here's the thing. You're trying to change, and that's good. You're recognizing problems and fixing them, but you're still trying to fix everything by promoting people or implementing systems. Sometimes the fix is simpler than that. What do you mean? I mean, maybe you don't need to restructure the whole company. Maybe you just need to treat people like human beings instead of assets. Learn their names, ask how their day was. Say thank you when they do good work. Notice the invisible labor that keeps everything running. He gestured around the office. All this, the policies, the protocols, the transformation plan, it's good. But it's also complicated, and sometimes the most powerful thing a leader can do is something very simple. Like what? Like seeing people, really seeing them, not as functions or problems or opportunities, but as actual people with lives and families and struggles you know nothing about. Ryan opened the door. Do that, and the rest will follow. Don't do that, and all the policies in the world won't matter. He left, and Evelyn stood in her office surrounded by the trappings of success, the awards, the expensive furniture, the view that cost extra millions in construction just to secure, and felt the truth of his words settle into her bones. She'd been trying to fix the company. What she needed to fix was herself. That evening, instead of working late, Evelyn did something unprecedented. She went home at 6 p.m. Her apartment was a penthouse in the financial district. Minimalist, expensive, sterile. She'd bought it 5 years ago for the address and the investment value. She'd never bothered to make it feel like home because she was never there long enough for it to matter. She poured a glass of wine and stood at the window, watching the city transition from day to night. Her phone rang. Her mother calling from Connecticut. Evelyn almost didn't answer. Their relationship was complicated, built on mutual disappointment and biannual obligatory conversations. But something made her pick up. Evelyn, I wasn't sure you'd answer. Hi, Mom. I wanted to check in. I saw the news about the power outage at your building. Are you all right? Evelyn felt surprise bloom in her chest. Her mother never followed industry news, never paid attention to the details of Evelyn's work. I'm fine. It was handled. The article said employees were trapped. That must have been frightening. It was educational. Evelyn sat down on the couch, expensive, uncomfortable, chosen by a designer for aesthetics, not livability. Mom, can I ask you something? Of course. When I was growing up, you always pushed me to be perfect. Straight A's, top of the class, never make mistakes. Why? Her mother was quiet for a moment. Because I wanted you to have opportunities I never had. I wanted you to be strong enough that nothing could hurt you. But it did hurt me. It made me afraid of failure, afraid of being vulnerable, afraid of being anything less than perfect. I know. Her mother's voice cracked slightly. I realized that too late. By the time I understood what I'd done, you were already so armored I couldn't reach you anymore. Evelyn felt tears prick her eyes, unexpected, unwelcome. I built a whole company based on those fears, and it almost destroyed me. But it didn't. You're still here, still fighting. Her mother paused. You know what I've learned in my 72 years? Perfection is a prison. And the key to getting out is admitting you don't have all the answers. They talked for another 20 minutes, really talked, maybe for the first time in decades, about fear and failure and the ways they'd both mistaken armor for strength. When Evelyn hung up, she felt lighter somehow, cracked open, but in a way that let air in instead of keeping everything locked down. She spent the rest of the evening doing something she hadn't done in years. She thought about what she actually wanted her life to look like. Not her career, not her company, not her legacy, her life. And for the first time since she'd built Anderson Technologies from nothing into an empire, Evelyn Cross allowed herself to imagine what it would feel like to be something other than perfect, to be honest, to be vulnerable, to be human. It was terrifying. It was also, somehow, the first real breath she'd taken in 20 years. The next morning, Evelyn arrived at the office at 7:30 instead of 6. Not because she was slacking, but because she'd stopped at a coffee shop on the way and actually sat down to drink her coffee instead of gulping it in the car. Small change, radical in its implications. Kevin looked surprised when she walked in, but said nothing. He'd learned over the years to adapt to Evelyn's rhythms without question. "Clear my schedule from 11 to 1, she told him. "You have the strategic planning review at 11:30. "Reschedule it. I'm doing something else." Kevin made a note, his face carefully neutral. "May I ask what?" "I'm having lunch in the cafeteria, and I'm going to keep having lunch there every day until people stop being surprised to see me." A flicker of something, approval, maybe, crossed Kevin's face before he resumed his professional mask. "I'll make sure you're not disturbed." "Actually, I want to be disturbed. That's the point." Evelyn spent the morning working through the transformation plan, breaking it into actionable phases. Infrastructure audit by end of month. Leadership training starting next week. Town hall scheduled for Friday, where she'd announce the changes company-wide and, more importantly, take questions. Real questions, not the sanitized, pre-screened versions she usually entertained. At 11 a.m., she got an email from Jennifer Park with the subject line, "You should see this." The attachment was a spreadsheet tracking employee sentiment on the internal anonymous feedback system. Normally, those results were compiled quarterly and filtered through HR before reaching executive level. Jennifer had apparently given Evelyn direct access. The data was brutal and beautiful in equal measure. People were talking, really talking, about the power outage, about Ryan, about the rumors of major changes coming. The sentiment was cautiously hopeful, tinged with skepticism that anyone in leadership could really change. One comment stood out. "I'll believe it when Cross actually shows up like a regular person, instead of a corporate ghost who only appears to fire people." Fair enough, Evelyn thought. At 11:15, she headed down to the cafeteria. The lunch rush was just beginning, the room filling with people from all departments and levels. Evelyn got in line behind a young man from accounting who went rigid when he noticed her, like he'd been caught doing something wrong by standing near her. "Relax," Evelyn said. "I'm just here for lunch." "Yes, ma'am." He stared straight ahead, shoulders tight. Evelyn tried again. "What's good here? I don't actually eat in the cafeteria much. The chicken panini is usually pretty solid, and the soup bar is fresh on Thursdays." "Thanks. I'll try the panini." She did, along with a salad and water, and when she reached the register, the cashier, an older woman whose name tag read Donna, looked at her with open shock. "Miss Cross, I didn't know executives ate down here. We should more often. How long have you worked here, Donna?" 12 years, ma'am." 12 years, and Evelyn had never once acknowledged her existence. "Thank you for feeding us all. This place runs on you." Donna blinked rapidly, and Evelyn realized with horror that the simple acknowledgement had brought the woman close to tears. "Thank you, ma'am. That's very kind." Evelyn paid and turned to survey the room. Most tables were full, people clustered with their departments or friendship groups. She spotted a table with 3 people, enough space for one more without being intrusive. "Mind if I join you?" The 3 employees, 2 women and a man, all looking to be in their late 20s or early 30s, exchanged glances that spoke volumes. "Of course, Ms. Cross," one of the women said, moving her bag to make room. Evelyn sat down. Awkward silence descended like fog. "I'm Evelyn," she said, trying to cut through it. I know I should probably know all of your names, but I don't. I'm sorry about that. Sarah Chen, Product Marketing, the woman who'd moved her bag. Jamal Washington, Software Engineering. Lisa Nguyen, UX Design. Nice to meet you all. Actually, meet you, I mean. Evelyn took a bite of her panini. This is good. Thanks for the recommendation, she said to the accounting guy at the next table, who looked startled to be addressed. Another silence, less awkward, but still uncertain. Lisa broke it. Is it true? The rumors about the changes? What rumors? That you're completely overhauling how the company operates. That you admitted we have a toxic culture. That someone from facilities saved the building during the blackout. Evelyn set down her sandwich. Yes to all of those. Except it was a custodian, not facilities. Ryan Cole. And yes, I did admit our culture has problems. Because it does. Sarah leaned forward slightly. What kind of changes are we talking about? The kind where you can make mistakes without getting fired. The kind where, if you see a problem, you can report it without fear of retaliation. The kind where we value competence and honesty over politics and perfection. Evelyn met each of their eyes. The kind where I eat lunch in the cafeteria and learn people's names because I should have been doing that all along. Jamal studied her with open skepticism. No offense, Ms. Cross, but I've been here 3 years. I've watched people get destroyed for minor mistakes. My friend got fired for missing a deadline by 2 days because his kid was in the hospital. What makes this different from just good PR? The challenge was direct, almost confrontational. The old Evelyn would have crushed it, made an example, reminded him who held the power. The new Evelyn, or the version she was trying to become, took a breath and answered honestly. Nothing makes it different except whether I actually follow through. And you have every right to be skeptical because I've given you 3 years of reasons not to trust me. She pushed her plate aside. Your friend who got fired, what was his name? Marcus. Marcus Chen. No relation to Sarah. And his kid was in the hospital? Yeah, emergency appendectomy. Marcus tried to get coverage for his project but couldn't find anyone qualified on short notice. Asked for an extension, got denied, missed the deadline trying to do everything from the hospital, got terminated. Evelyn felt sick. Who denied the extension? I don't know. It went up the chain and came back as a no. She pulled out her phone and sent a message to HR. Need employee file for Marcus Chen, terminated approximately 3 years ago, on my desk in 1 hour. Then she looked at Jamal. I can't undo that decision, but I can make sure it doesn't happen again. And if Marcus wants to reapply, I'll personally review his application. He works at Google now, Jamal said quietly, making 40% more than he did here, with better work-life balance. He's not coming back. Then we lost good talent because we valued deadlines over humanity. That's on me. And it's exactly the kind of thing I'm trying to change. Lisa spoke up, her voice tentative. What if people take advantage? What if everyone starts claiming emergencies to avoid deadlines? Then we deal with those cases individually, with investigation instead of blanket policy. But I'd rather err on the side of trusting people than assuming everyone's lying. Evelyn picked up her water. Look, I don't have all the answers. I'm figuring this out as I go. But I know the old way was broken, and I know that change starts with me being willing to admit I was wrong. They talked for another 20 minutes about projects, frustrations, the things that worked and the things that didn't. Evelyn mostly listened, taking mental notes, seeing her company through the eyes of people who lived in it daily rather than observing from 72 floors up. When lunch ended and they dispersed back to their departments, Evelyn sat alone for a moment, watching the cafeteria's rhythm. The invisible labor of people like Donna, the casual conversations that built relationships, the human ecosystem that existed entirely beneath her previous notice. Her phone buzzed. Wilson Chen. Quarterly investor call tomorrow. They'll ask about the power outage and the transformation plan. Are you ready? Evelyn typed back. As ready as I'll ever be for telling investors we're prioritizing culture over short-term profits. You're either very brave or very crazy. Probably both. She spent the afternoon in meetings, but instead of dominating them with pronouncements and demands, she asked questions. What's blocking you? What resources do you need? What would you do if you had complete authority to solve this problem? The responses were halting at first, people uncertain if this was a trap. But slowly, they began to speak, to offer ideas, to admit challenges without the usual defensive armor. By 5 p.m., Evelyn's head was spinning with information she'd never had access to before, not because it was hidden, but because she'd never created space for people to share it. She was gathering her things when Kevin appeared in the doorway. "Ms. Cross, there's someone here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's important." "Who?" "Emma Cole, Ryan's daughter." Evelyn's eyebrows rose. "Send her in." A 9-year-old girl entered the office with the determined stride of someone on a mission. She wore a school uniform and carried a backpack almost as big as she was. Her face was serious, much too serious for a child. "Ms. Cross? I'm Emma, Ryan's daughter. We talked on the phone." "I remember, the boss lady." Evelyn gestured to a chair. "What brings you here, Emma?" Emma climbed into the chair, feet dangling above the floor. "I need to talk to you about my dad." "Is he okay?" "He's fine, but he's being stubborn, and I need your help to fix it." Despite everything, Evelyn almost smiled. "What do you need me to fix?" "You offered him a better job, right? With more money?" "I did. And he said no because he thinks I need him to keep his schedule the same." "That's what he told me." Emma's face scrunched up with frustration. "That's so stupid. I mean, I love my dad, and I'm glad he wants to spend time with me, but he's really smart and really good at fixing things, and he should be doing more than cleaning floors." "Emma, no, listen. I know why he said no. It's because of my mom. When she was sick, he worked all the time trying to pay medical bills, and he feels guilty about it. So now he's trying to make up for it by being around all the time. But I don't need him all the time. I need him to be happy, and he's not happy cleaning toilets when he could be doing important stuff." The insight from a 9-year-old was staggering. "What makes you think he's not happy?" "Because I see his face when he comes home and his back hurts from mopping. I see him looking at his old work clothes in the closet. I hear him talking to Mrs. Chen about how he misses using his brain for complex problems." Emma leaned forward. "He's good at what he does now, but he could be great at something harder. And he won't do it because he thinks I need him to be available 24/7. But I don't. I need him to be proud of himself." Evelyn sat back, studying this small person who'd somehow understood her father better than he understood himself. "What do you want me to do?" "Offer him the job again. But this time, tell him he can have flexible hours. That he can still pick me up from school and have dinner with me and not work weekends. Tell him he can be a good facilities manager and a good dad. Because he can. He's the best dad ever, and he'd be amazing at that job if he wasn't so scared of messing up again." "Emma, I can't force your father to take a job he doesn't want." "I know, but you can make it so it's actually something he wants instead of something he's afraid of." Emma pulled a piece of paper from her backpack. "I wrote down his schedule and mine. See? I'm at school from 8 to 3, aftercare until 5. That's 9 hours where he could work without missing anything important. And weekends we could still do stuff because you said no weekends, right?" The paper showed a carefully planned schedule in a child's handwriting, complete with color coding and notes. "You did this yourself?" "Yeah. I'm good at organizing. My teacher says I should be a project manager when I grow up." Emma's face softened slightly. "My dad saved your building. He saved all those people. And he did it because he's good at solving problems when other people panic. That's exactly what a facilities manager should be, right? Someone who solves problems?" "Yes, it is." "So offer him the job again. Please. Not for the money. We're okay on money. But because he deserves to do something that makes him proud. And because I think he's been punishing himself for not being perfect when my mom was sick. And maybe if he sees he can do hard things and still be a good dad, he'll stop punishing himself." Evelyn felt something crack open in her chest. The same feeling she'd had watching her company almost fall apart. The same feeling she'd had admitting she was wrong to the board. The feeling of seeing truth you'd been avoiding. "You're very wise for 9 years old." "I'm almost 10, and my mom was smart, so I got good genes." "Emma, even if I offer again, your dad might still say no. He's an adult and he gets to make his own choices." "I know, but at least give him the choice that's actually real, not the choice he's making because he's scared." Emma stood, shouldering her backpack. Mrs. Chen is waiting downstairs. I should go. Does your dad know you came here? No, he'd probably be mad. But sometimes you have to do things that make people mad if it's for their own good. Emma paused at the door. You're doing that too, right? With the company changes? Making people mad because it's better in the long run? Something like that. Then we're both doing the same thing, trying to help people who are too stubborn to help themselves. She left, and Evelyn sat in her office feeling like she'd just been outsmarted by a fourth grader. But Emma was right. About Ryan. About fear disguised as practicality. About the way guilt could trap people in smaller lives than they were capable of living. About all of it. Evelyn pulled out her phone and sent a message to Ryan. Can you come to my office tomorrow at 2 p.m.? Not about your job, about mine. I need your perspective on something. The reply came 5 minutes later. I'm off shift at 6 a.m. tomorrow, but I can come back. Everything okay? Everything's fine. Just want your input on the town hall I'm planning. You're the only person who's told me the unfiltered truth. I need more of that. Okay. See you at 2. Evelyn looked at Emma's carefully drawn schedule, still sitting on her desk, and made a decision. The town hall was scheduled for Friday at 3 p.m. in the main auditorium. Evelyn had insisted on making it accessible to all shifts, repeating it 3 times throughout the day so night workers and day workers could all attend at least one session. By Friday morning, the entire company was humming with speculation. Marcus stopped by her office at noon. Are you sure about this? Open Q&A with 4,000 employees who've spent years being afraid to speak up? It could get ugly. It probably will get ugly. That's the point. You don't have to do this all at once. You could phase it in, start with smaller groups. No. Evelyn gathered her notes. If I'm asking everyone else to be vulnerable and honest, I need to model it. That means standing in front of everyone and taking whatever comes. The first session started at 3 p.m. The auditorium was packed, every seat filled, people standing in the aisles. Evelyn walked onto the stage without introduction or fanfare, just her and a microphone and 2,000 people watching with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. Thank you for coming, she began. I'm Evelyn Cross, though most of you know that already. I'm the CEO of Anderson Technologies, and I've been running this company for 8 years. And in those 8 years, I've built something I thought was excellent, disciplined, successful, the kind of company that wins. She paused, looking out at the sea of faces. I was wrong. Not about the success. Our numbers prove we've built something valuable, but about what it cost to build it, about the culture I created to get those results, about the fear I used as a management tool because I thought fear and respect were the same thing. The room was absolutely silent. 2 weeks ago, this building lost power. 200 people were trapped in the dark. And in that crisis, I was useless. My authority meant nothing. My control meant nothing. The person who saved us was Ryan Cole, a night custodian who had the competence and calm to organize an evacuation and restore our backup generators. He did this not because it was his job, but because he saw people who needed help and he knew how to provide it. Evelyn saw Ryan in the crowd, standing against the back wall, looking uncomfortable with the attention. Ryan is the same person who, 3 weeks before that, interrupted an executive meeting to tell me I was wrong. He told me I was humiliating someone for a mechanical failure that wasn't their fault. He told me that fear doesn't fix problems. It just makes people afraid to tell you when things are broken. And he was absolutely right. Someone in the audience shifted. Whispers rippled through the crowd. So here's what's changing. Starting Monday, we're implementing new policies around mistake management, problem reporting, and leadership accountability. You'll all receive detailed information by end of day. But the policies aren't the real change. The real change is me. Evelyn took a breath. I'm committing to being a different kind of leader. The kind who admits when she's wrong, the kind who values honesty over obedience, the kind who sees you as human beings with lives and families and struggles, not just as resources to be optimized, and I'm asking you to hold me accountable to that. If you see me reverting to old patterns, call me on it. If you see problems I'm not addressing, tell me. If you have ideas that could make this company better, share them. She paused again, looking across the audience. I know most of you don't trust this. You've spent years learning that honesty here is dangerous, that mistakes are fatal, that the safest thing to do is keep your head down and follow orders. And I can't undo that with one speech. Trust is earned over time through consistent action. So, I'm not asking you to trust me today. I'm asking you to give me the chance to earn your trust over the next weeks and months by showing you that this change is real. Evelyn set down her notes. Now, questions. Real questions, not the sanitized versions. This is your company too. Tell me what you need to know. For several seconds, nobody moved. Then a hand went up in the middle section, a woman Evelyn didn't recognize. Yes? The woman stood, her voice carrying clearly. My name is Patricia Reeves. I work in customer service. If we start reporting problems openly, how do we know we won't be punished for pointing out things that make leadership look bad? You don't know, not yet, which is why I'm implementing an anonymous reporting system with third-party oversight. No one in leadership will see who submitted what. We'll only see the problems that need addressing. Evelyn met her eyes. But more than that, I'm making a commitment right now, publicly, that I will not retaliate against anyone for honest feedback. And if I break that commitment, I want you to report it to the board. Wilson Chen has agreed to personally investigate any claims of retaliation. Another hand. A young man near the front. I'm David Park, IT support. What about the people who've already been fired for minor mistakes? Are you going to bring them back? I can't unfire people, but I can reach out to former employees and invite them to reapply if they're interested. I can provide good references for people who left under circumstances that were unjust, and I can make sure we don't repeat those mistakes going forward. More hands now, questions coming faster. A woman asked about the infrastructure upgrades. Would they affect productivity? A man asked about the leadership training. Would it be mandatory for everyone or just executives? Someone asked if Evelyn planned to change her own behavior or just implement policies. She answered each one honestly, without deflection or corporate speak. When she didn't know the answer, she said so and promised to find out. 30 minutes in, a voice from the back. What about people like Ryan? People who do essential work but don't have fancy degrees. Are you actually going to value that, or is this just talk? Evelyn looked toward the voice and found Ryan, who was trying very hard to look like he hadn't asked the question. That's a fair question. And the honest answer is I don't know yet because I've never tried. I've spent my entire career valuing credentials over competence, degrees over demonstrated skill. That was wrong, and I'm working to change it, but change takes time, and I'm asking for patience while I figure out how to actually implement that value in our hiring and promotion practices. She paused, then added, but I can tell you this, I've offered Ryan a facilities manager position twice now, and he's turned it down both times because he values stability and time with his daughter more than career advancement. And that choice, prioritizing what actually matters in life over what society says should matter, that's exactly the kind of wisdom I want in our leadership. So yes, I value it. Whether I can figure out how to actually integrate it into our systems remains to be seen. Ryan shook his head slightly, but there was something in his expression. Not quite a smile, but close. The questions continued for another hour. Some hostile, some genuinely curious, all of them showing years of pent-up frustration and fear finally finding voice. Evelyn took it all without defensiveness, without anger, without retreating into the armor of authority. When the session finally ended, she was exhausted and exhilarated. This was what leadership could feel like when it wasn't based on fear. She did 2 more sessions that evening and into the night, answering the same questions and new ones, facing the same skepticism and occasional hostility. By 11 p.m., when the final night shift session ended, her voice was hoarse and her feet ached, and she felt more alive than she had in years. Ryan waited for her outside the auditorium. That was something, he said. Was it terrible? It was honest, which I think is what people needed. They walked toward the elevators together, the building quiet around them. Your daughter came to see me, Evelyn said. Ryan stopped walking. Emma? When? Earlier this week. She made a very compelling argument about why I should offer you the facilities manager job again with flexible hours that would let you still be present for her. That kid, Ryan ran a hand through his hair. I'm going to have a serious talk with her about boundaries. She's smart, and she understands you better than you think. She's 9. She doesn't understand adult complications. Maybe. Or maybe she sees clearly because she's not weighed down by all the baggage we adults carry. Evelyn turned to face him. Ryan, I'm not going to pressure you about the job, but Emma was right about one thing. You should be proud of the work you do. And I think you could be proud of facilities management in a way that's hard to be proud of custodial work, not because one is better than the other, but because one uses more of your capabilities. Ryan was quiet for a long moment. My wife used to say something similar, that I was too smart to be happy doing simple work forever. I told her intelligence didn't matter as much as stability. We fought about it a lot. His voice went soft. Turns out, we wasted a lot of time fighting about things that didn't matter. And now I can't get that time back. So don't waste more time doing something that doesn't challenge you because you think that's what Emma needs. Ask her what she actually needs. I know what she needs: consistency, stability, a father who's present. She needs those things. She also needs a father who's fulfilled, who shows her that you can do hard things and still maintain balance, who models that work can be meaningful without consuming your life. Evelyn pressed the elevator button. But again, this is your choice. I'm just asking you to make sure it's actually your choice, not guilt disguised as practicality. The elevator arrived. They rode up in silence, Ryan to continue his shift, Evelyn to grab her things before finally going home. At the 53rd floor, before the doors closed, Ryan spoke. What would the hours actually be? Whatever we agree on, core hours 9 to 5, flexibility around Emma's schedule, no weekends except genuine emergencies. You'd have a team, so you wouldn't be the only person responsible for every crisis. And if it doesn't work? If I try it and can't balance it? Then we figure something else out. I'm not trying to trap you, Ryan. I'm trying to give you an opportunity to use your full capabilities in a way that works for your life. Ryan nodded slowly. Let me talk to Emma. Really talk to her, not just assume I know what's best. I'll let you know next week. Fair enough. The doors closed, and Evelyn rode the rest of the way to her floor alone. Cool. The answer came on Monday morning. Evelyn was reviewing the weekend's anonymous feedback submissions, a system that had gone live Friday night and was already flooded with responses. When Kevin knocked, Ryan Cole is here, says he'd like a word. Send him in. Ryan entered wearing street clothes instead of his uniform, Emma beside him holding his hand. Miss Cross. Ryan took a breath. Emma and I had a long talk this weekend about what we both need, what we both want, and how to balance those things, and we decided we'd like to try this, if the offer's still open. Evelyn felt a smile spread across her face, genuine, uncontrolled. The offer's still open. I have conditions. Name them. I work 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. I pick Emma up from school at 3:30, which means I leave at 3. I make up those hours in the morning or during lunch, but I don't miss her pickup. No weekend work except genuine building emergencies, and even then I get compensated time off. I get 2 weeks to train my replacement in custodial and transition my knowledge. And if this doesn't work for any reason, I can return to my old position without stigma. Agreed to all of it. Ryan blinked. Just like that? Just like that. You're the most competent person I've met in this building, Ryan. And I'm not going to lose you because I couldn't be flexible about hours. Emma tugged her father's hand. Told you she'd say yes. Yeah, you were right. Ryan looked at Evelyn. When do I start? 2 weeks from today? That gives you time to transition and me time to set up your team and office. I get an office? You get whatever you need to do the job well. Office, equipment, budget authority, direct line to me for emergencies. Evelyn pulled up a document on her computer. HR will handle the formal offer letter, but I wanted to tell you myself, thank you, for agreeing to this, for challenging me when I needed it, for showing me what leadership actually looks like. Ryan shook his head slightly. I didn't do anything special. You did. You just don't think it's special because you're the kind of person who does the right thing automatically instead of calculating the cost first. Emma beamed. My dad's the best. Yeah, Evelyn agreed. He really is. They left, Emma chattering excitedly about telling her teacher her dad got a promotion, Ryan looking bemused and slightly overwhelmed. Evelyn sat back in her chair, looking out at the city, and felt something settle in her chest. This was what transformation felt like, not the big dramatic speeches or policy changes. The small human moments where people chose trust over fear. 3 months later, Evelyn stood in the same auditorium for the quarterly town hall. The room was just as packed, but the energy was different. Less suspicious, more engaged. People actually asked questions about strategic direction, not just whether they'd get fired for speaking up. The changes were showing results. Employee satisfaction scores had jumped 15 points. Turnover was down 30%. 3 former employees had reapplied and been rehired, including Marcus Chen from Google, who'd taken a slight pay cut to come back to what he said was finally a place I want to work. The infrastructure upgrades were ahead of schedule, overseen by Ryan, who'd proven to be exactly as competent as Evelyn had hoped. He'd restructured the entire facilities department, cross-trained staff, and implemented preventive maintenance protocols that had reduced system failures by 60%. And he left every day at 3 to pick up Emma from school. After the town hall ended, Evelyn found him in the lobby, reviewing something on a tablet with 2 members of his team. "Got a minute?" she asked. Ryan nodded to his team and walked with her toward the windows overlooking the city. "How's it going?" Evelyn asked. "Good. Busy. I forgot how much I like solving complex problems." He gestured at the building around them. "This place is a mechanical puzzle. Every system interconnected, everything affecting everything else. It's fascinating." "And Emma?" "She's great. Proud as hell of her old man, which is both wonderful and embarrassing. She told her whole class I saved the building during the blackout. Now I'm apparently a superhero." Evelyn smiled. "You kind of are." "I just did what needed doing. That's what superheroes say." Ryan shook his head, but he was smiling. "What about you? How are you doing with all this change?" It was a simple question, but it hit deeper than he probably intended. "I'm learning," Evelyn said honestly. "I still slip into old patterns sometimes, get frustrated when things aren't perfect, want to control everything. But I'm getting better at catching myself, at remembering that leading through fear doesn't actually build anything sustainable." "And the board? They still support this?" "Mostly. Wilson is thrilled. Robert Kim still thinks I'm destroying the company. But the numbers are good, employee engagement is up, and we're winning contracts we would have lost under the old culture. So they're willing to let it continue." Ryan was quiet for a moment, looking out at the city. "Can I tell you something?" "Always. I wasn't afraid of you. That day, I walked into your meeting and told you that you were wrong. Everyone thinks I was brave, but I wasn't. I was just done being afraid. After Sarah died, after I lost everything that mattered, professional consequences stopped being scary. Getting fired couldn't hurt me worse than what I'd already survived." He turned to look at her. "But you? You were terrified. I could see it. Not of me, but of being wrong, of being imperfect, of showing any weakness at all. And I felt bad for you because that's a really exhausting way to live." Evelyn felt her throat tighten. "It was exhausting." "Is it still?" "Less. I'm still learning how to be human instead of perfect. Turns out it's harder than running a billion-dollar company." Ryan laughed. "Yeah, being human is pretty complicated, but at least you're trying. That's more than most people in your position would do." "I didn't have much choice. You made it pretty clear that what I was building wasn't sustainable. I suggested it. You chose to listen. That was the brave part." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the evening settle over the city. Somewhere in the building, 4,000 people were wrapping up their workdays, heading home to families and lives that existed beyond these walls. People Evelyn now knew by name, whose struggles she understood, whose competence she valued. "Thank you," Evelyn said quietly. "For what?" "For not being afraid of me, for telling me the truth when everyone else was too scared, for showing me what it looks like to choose what actually matters instead of what's supposed to matter." Ryan nodded slowly. "You know what the really crazy thing is? You're not nearly as scary as you thought you were. You were just so convinced you had to be perfect that you made everyone around you terrified of being human. But underneath all that armor, you're just a person trying to do good work, same as the rest of us." "That's the crazy thing? That I'm human?" "No. The crazy thing is that being human makes you a better leader than being perfect ever did." Evelyn felt something release in her chest, the last piece of armor falling away, leaving her standing in the aftermath of transformation. Vulnerable, imperfect, human. And strangely, that felt like freedom. "I should get going," Ryan said. "Emma has a school project due tomorrow, and I promised I'd help." "What's the project?" "Biography of someone she admires. She's writing about her mom." His voice softened. "Says her mom taught her that being smart is good, but being kind is better. That you can be both strong and gentle. That the best people admit when they're wrong and keep trying to be better." She was wise. She was, and she'd be proud of Emma. Proud of how she's growing up brave and honest. Ryan started to walk away, then paused. "She'd probably be proud of you too, weird as that sounds. Sarah always believed people could change if they wanted to badly enough. That nobody's broken beyond fixing." He left, and Evelyn stood alone in the lobby as the building emptied around her. She thought about Sarah Cole, a woman she'd never met, who taught her daughter wisdom that a 9-year-old had used to help her father heal. She thought about Ryan, who'd lost everything and rebuilt a life based on what actually mattered instead of what he was supposed to want. She thought about the thousands of people in this building who were finally being seen, being valued, being treated like the humans they'd always been. And she thought about herself, who she'd been, who she was becoming, and the strange, terrifying, beautiful journey between those 2 points. Her phone buzzed, a message from Wilson. "Board meeting next week. They want to discuss expansion plans. You ready?" Evelyn typed back, "I don't know, but I'll figure it out." Then she added, "And if I can't, I'll admit it and ask for help. Turns out that's allowed now." Wilson's reply was immediate. "Good. That's how I know the change is real." Evelyn gathered her things and headed for the elevator. As she waited, she caught her reflection in the polished doors. The same woman who'd stood in this spot 8 years ago when Anderson Technologies was just an idea and she was just an engineer with something to prove. She looked tired, older, less armored, more real. The elevator arrived and she stepped in, pressing the button for the parking garage. As the doors began to close, she saw the cleaning cart in the hallway. Ryan's replacement, a young man named Carlos who Ryan was training with the same care he brought to everything. The building would be clean in the morning. The systems would function. The invisible labor would continue, done by people she now knew by name and valued, not despite their positions, but because of the essential work they did. The elevator descended and Evelyn felt the weight of the day settle into her bones. Not the crushing weight of perfection maintained through fear, but the honest weight of real work done by real humans trying their best. It was heavy. It was also lighter than anything she'd carried before. At home that night, Evelyn did something she hadn't done in years. She called her mother. "Hi, Mom." "Evelyn, this is a pleasant surprise. Usually I only hear from you on holidays." "I know, I'm sorry about that." Evelyn kicked off her shoes and curled up on her uncomfortable designer couch. "I wanted to tell you something." "What's that?" "You were right. About perfection being a prison. About needing to be vulnerable to be free." Evelyn felt tears prick her eyes. "And I wanted to say thank you for telling me that, even though I wasn't ready to hear it at the time." Her mother's breath caught. "Oh, sweetheart, I'm so glad you're learning that. It's hard." "The best things usually are." They talked for an hour, really talked, building a bridge across decades of careful distance. When they finally said goodbye, Evelyn felt lighter somehow. She made herself dinner. Actual dinner, not takeout, not working through a meal at her desk. She ate slowly, watching the city lights through her windows, thinking about everything that had changed, and everything that was still changing. Before bed, she opened her laptop and started writing an email to the entire company. Not a policy announcement or strategic memo, but something simpler. To everyone at Anderson Technologies, thank you for giving me the chance to learn how to lead differently. For your patience as I figure out how to be human instead of perfect. For your courage in speaking up when I create space for honesty. For showing me every day what this company can be when it's built on trust instead of fear. I'm still learning, I'm still making mistakes, but I'm committed to doing better, being better, building better. Not because it's easy, but because you deserve leadership that sees you, values you, and trusts you to be the excellent humans you already are. Thank you for believing that change is possible. Thank you for proving that it works. Onward, Evelyn. She sent it at 11 p.m. and went to bed. By morning, there were 300 replies. Most of them just said, "Thank you for trying." And somehow, that was enough. Evelyn Cross had spent 20 years building an empire on fear and perfection. Now she was building something else, something messier, harder, more honest, something human. And for the first time in her adult life, she wasn't afraid of being seen, not powerful, not perfect, just human. And strangely, beautifully, impossibly, that felt like coming home.